online, on TV, and in the movies. Please call or text.
I'm Andrea Cabral, in for Marjorie Egan. Then it's Live Music Friday with Boston Lyric Opera ahead of a free pop-up street stage show in Roxbury this weekend. And later in the show, the Globe's Marcela Garcia discusses private equity's hold on the pet.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. Vice President Harris is expected to unveil her economic proposals at a North Carolina campaign rally today. She's calling for an increase in the child tax credit up to $6,000. She's also expected to call for a federal ban on price gouging in the food industry. Former President Donald Trump held a news conference at his golf club in New Jersey yesterday. NPR's Franco Ordonez reports he blamed Biden-Harris policies for inflation.
The former president blamed Vice President Kamala Harris for the high cost of food and criticized her own proposals as communist price controls.
Kamala Harris is a radical California liberal who broke the economy, broke the border, and broke the world, frankly.
But he also veered away from policy, admitted he was angry, and said he felt he was entitled to making personal attacks.
Whether the personal attacks are good, bad, I mean, she certainly attacks me personally. She actually called me weird. He's weird.
It was clear the weird label had got under his skin. He also emphasized that he's the candidate, and he has to do it his own way. Franco Ordonez, NPR News.
Ceasefire talks for Gaza have concluded in Qatar. Mediators have presented a proposal they say can bridge the gaps between Israel and Hamas. They say it can allow for a ceasefire deal in the enclave. Israeli settlers rampaged in a Palestinian village in the Israeli-occupied West Bank late last night. The settlers killed one Palestinian and injured others, according to Palestinian health officials. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reports Israeli leaders condemn the violence.
Dozens of masked settlers stormed a village near Nablus, shooting live ammunition at residents and burning homes and cars. The Israeli military was called to disperse the crowd and later issued a statement calling it a, quote, serious incident that would be investigated. The military said one Israeli civilian was taken into custody. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the attack. Far-right Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, an ultra-nationalist settler who has previously defended violent actions by settlers, called Thursday's rioters, quote, criminals. The frequency of violence by Israeli settlers against Palestinians in the West Bank has doubled since the start of the war in Gaza last October, according to the UN. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
North Carolina authorities say they have recaptured a prisoner who had been on the loose for several days. Ramon Alston is serving a life prison term for murdering a 1-year-old girl. Authorities found him and a female acquaintance at a hotel outside Charlotte early this morning. Audrey Richardson works at the hotel and says the pair had apparently checked in under the woman's name.
It was under the female's name, and another person had checked her in, and there was no red flags or anything like that.
The woman is charged with aiding and abetting a fugitive. The prisoner had escaped Tuesday from a medical transport van. On Wall Street, the Dow was down 30 points. This is NPR.
With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Craig Lamolt. State transportation officials are out with a study on options to restore passenger rail service across northern sections of the state. The so-called Northern Tier Report proposed different options from Boston to the Berkshires. Cost estimates came in as high as nearly $3 billion, but Belchertown State Rep Aaron Saunders says that number should be put into perspective.
When you look at the type of investment that the Commonwealth puts into transportation, especially in the eastern part of the state, I feel that a build-out like this is relatively modest in comparison, and certainly modest compared to the benefits it will provide the western two-thirds of the Commonwealth.
A public comment period on the study is ongoing. State lawmakers are giving the green light to a broad bill meant to address ongoing issues in maternal health care. The bill was approved in an informal session of the legislature yesterday and now goes to Governor Healy. Health outcomes around childbirth have gotten worse in Massachusetts over the past decade, especially for black women. State Senator Liz Miranda represents some of Boston's largely black neighborhoods. She first signed on as a sponsor of the bill 6 years ago.
For all the black and brown women who are not listened to, this has been well worth the ride.
Among the bill's many elements is a provision that will make it easier for new standalone birth centers to open and stay open. The number of standalone centers has dwindled in recent years to just one in Northampton. Partly sunny today, a high near 80. It's going down to the mid-60s overnight. Looks like a pretty nice weekend. Partly sunny on Saturday, highs in the low 80s, and pretty much the same thing on Sunday, partly sunny and in the low 80s.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include C3 AI. C3 Generative AI works to enable rapid access to hallucination-free insights from enterprise systems using any LLM, helping turn the invisible into the obvious. This is Enterprise AI.
Welcome to Boston Public Radio. I am Jim Browdy. Marjorie has a day off. She will be back tomorrow. Andrew Cabral, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety and former Sheriff of Suffolk County, sitting in. Hello again, Andrea. How are you?
Hello again, Jim.
Great to see ya. We are streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. And before we get started, let me just say one of the joys on Friday of getting here early, as we do, and our colleagues do, is get to hear the performers for Live Music Friday rehearse, which they did. They're going to be with us a little bit after 11:30. There's this street stage free concert tomorrow morning in Roxbury's Madison Park, and Cornell Copley and Angela Yam rehearsed this morning. Were they good? Or
They
were
were
they
fantastic,
good?
both of them.
Fantastic. So I'm telling you, if you're not here, get here by 11:30, and if you can't get here, make sure you watch and listen to them streaming. Again, that's a little bit after 11:30. So if you've been online at all the past few weeks, you probably know that Kamala Harris's campaign for president is capitalizing on the surge in interest about her, driven in part by the fact that she's not that well known by a lot of Americans. So to the campaign, people posting videos about Harris's so-called brat energy and her quirky coconut tree comments is a net positive. And this week, President Biden held the first ever Creator Economy Conference, hosting dozens of popular internet influencers, content creators, people who make money on the internet by posting commentaries and content. Beyond amassing huge followings and hawking products on the internet, influencers, according to a study out of, I think it was Harvard, might have increasing political power come election day. So the questions for you is, will you vote for whoever Taylor Swift tells you to? On the flip side, if somebody as odious as, let's say, I don't know, Elon Musk endorses another odious person, does that help turn you off? Or are you into odiousness? Or is your mind just totally made up? Who cares what George Clooney or anybody else has to say? What influences your political thought and decision making other than your own? The lines are open at 877-301-8970. I've known you a long time. I can't imagine anybody outside your brain having any influence on who you voted for. I think I mean that as a compliment. I'm not sure. I think it is a compliment. Is that a fair statement?
That is probably the fairest statement you have ever made about me. That is absolutely true. No, but it's not that I don't. There are people that I listen to and feel sort of guided by sometimes with regard to my thought. But in some respects, it's a little bit different when you've actually been in politics yourself and actually been elected. You do tend to, the amount of knowledge that you sort of amass about the political landscape, both, sort of locally and even, writ on a much larger scale, that becomes part of your accumulated knowledge of how the world works. And it does make you more focused and in your own head about making those kinds of decisions.
Well, also, it seems to me, I don't mean to be disrespectful to people, but if you haven't made your mind up about who you're voting for president, you're a lost cause. So, I mean, forget influencers.
How can you be undecided?
But when you get a little bit lower, like local, I've told this story before, a governor's council, for example,
right.
Which I'm not crazy about the fact that it exists, because most people don't know it exists, deals with pardons, confirming judges, etc. I voted in every election. I voted in every office. I tried to do my research. I didn't do the research maybe 6 or 8 years ago for the governor's council election in my district. I was walking in. I had no idea who I was going to vote for. I figured I was just going to Google something when I was in the little booth there. And a young woman stopped me and says, who are you voting for governor's council? I said, I don't know. And she said, I'd like to make the case for so-and-so. And I'm basically half ignoring her until she says, and by the way, he's my father. At which point, I totally melted, and I voted for the guy. And it turns out he was actually quite good, but that was it was sort of, happenstance. I mean, for example, this morning, speaking of other endorsements, do they matter? In a governor's council race, Mara Dolan was over the incumbent in the governor's council, Marilyn Devaney.
Right.
I mean, does that matter? Because I am guessing most people don't even know who their governor's counselor is. So in certain lower level things, it matters. I don't know how much it matters in general, except that it was a Harvard study we read this morning, right? Said that it has huge influence in this election. Why do you think that is?
Well, I actually think that I started thinking about it after I read it. It's not really a new thing. When you think about it, we've always used celebrities to influence things. I'm not trying to date myself here because it's World War II. But remember when celebrities used to get out and tell people to buy war bonds and support the war effort?
Actually,
and they'd use Clark.
But I know
you do remember that. I've seen it on TV, but I wasn't there when it happened. But we've always sort of used people who have a certain amount of celebrity or notoriety to influence decisions people have made. I think now we're more focused on them influencing people to buy things.
I totally
and
agree.
influencing people to do political things. And it's an actual economy, so more people are involved in it. So I don't know that it's necessarily new, but the Harvard study said it undeniably has an impact.
Large impact, not just on the margins, a large impact. Okay, so we're going to, before we get to the calls at 877-301-8970 and text, I'm going to try one out on you, because we both agreed you wouldn't be influenced by anybody. This is pretty powerful, though, and see if it influences you. Here's a presidential candidate, unnamed, at a press briefing in Florida, let's say, on Thursday, talking about a famous guy who owns a social media site endorsing him. Here is the presidential candidate and then the endorser. Here it is.
So Elon called me. As you know, he endorsed me full-throated. Great endorsement. I respect Elon a lot. He respects me.
So this is to people out there who are in the moderate camp to say, I think you should support Donald Trump for president.
Now that has some, be honest, that has a little influence on you, does it?
No.
Who is the person? Absolutely. By the way, when I heard that, and I heard the Musk thing, I listened to too much of it the other night, and then who is the person who's going to vote for Trump who wasn't going to vote for him already? That's what I can't quite figure out.
I have to believe that there have to be some people who are going to be influenced at the last minute by people they don't know, people who are just celebrities. They have to be, because in every poll, there is an undecided vote.
No, small, but there is an undecided, yeah.
So there's got to be somebody that applies to.
So Elon Musk's endorsement is not going to have that much of an effect on you?
It won't have any impact on me at all. But I do think it's a pretty brilliant idea to have a creator economy conference and to credential. I mean, the Democrats are going to credential. They're going to credential some of these influencers for the DNC. And it's not just to get, I mean, I'm sure from their perspective, it's a vote getter. But it's also an acknowledgement that the world operates differently now than it did even 10 years ago, and that you have to sort of bring people in if you want to keep at least Democrats as a large tent.
Let's take some calls. Laura in a car, you were first on Boston Public Radio with Andrew Cabral and me, Jim Browdy. Hi.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good.
Everyone's good? Good. Okay, so I, as an adult and dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, I don't care what George Clooney says or Taylor Swift, but I do think that the young people probably do. And I will acknowledge that in like down ballot races, if I haven't done my homework,
I agree.
Town people and so forth, if I have a neighbor who I really respect and they have somebody sign up in their lawn, I will vote that way. If they're a Democrat.
That's sort of proof of the point. Laura, thank you much for the call.
And I think that happens a lot. And a lot of times, the people that you see outside your polling place, sometimes they are your neighbors. They are people that you know, and you have a last-minute conversation with them before you go in to vote on the down-ballot stuff.
877-301-8970. The Taylor Swift thing, people point to the fact that she endorsed the Democratic opponent of is Blackburn's name, the Senator Marsha Blackburn?
That's the Republican,
from Tennessee, who won despite Swift's endorsement of the other candidate. No one knows if that narrowed the margin, but Swift is so huge. Did you hear last night after the concerts were canceled in Vienna, those 3 concerts because of actual threats? There are 5 concerts in Wembley Stadium. The first was last night. 90,000 people showed up.
Right.
Many of them Americans, by the way, who flew there to see the same. I can see how young voters who were totally committed to her, and she's totally into political participation, would care what she thinks. She hasn't endorsed Biden yet, by the way.
Right.
She did endorse him. I'm not Biden, Harris. She did endorse Biden 4 years ago. I can see it having an impact, no?
And again, it's not the first. Can you imagine if the Beatles had decided to endorse a candidate? The way they would have had for their time period, they would have had that sort of same kind of influence. The difference with Taylor Swift, though, is she is a one-woman economic engine for this country. Any place she goes in this country and
or
abroad,
any country, right?
She literally makes a difference in their bottom line, and that is something. When you add that to her fan base, and it's her fan base that's driving these revenues, that is a level of power that I don't know if we've actually seen that level of power in an artist up till now. And it'll be interesting to see if she decides to exercise it.
By the way, if you are somebody who cares about what Taylor Swift ultimately does, if she does something, or if you know somebody who you think vote will be determined should Swift endorse, tell our call screener and we'll pop you up to the top. Where do you want to go next, Andrea?
Well, first, Susan from Cranston texted us to say that the only influence she relies on is her own values, including integrity.
Wow.
So we have texters weighing in on what sways them or doesn't sway them. But we can go to Jackie in Seekonk.
Hey, Jackie.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Hi, Jackie.
Thanks.
I care about all the issues, environment, immigration, gun violence, war in the Middle East. But what has become the biggest issue for me now is what is your plan to reach across the aisle and get people to cooperate with each other? I want somebody to ID it as a problem, and I want to see a plan for a solution. Specifically, like, how do you undo the damage that the Trump years have inflicted on us?
Well, Jackie, I would say the beauty. I like your spirit there. The beauty of this race is you have one candidate who's been part of a team for 4 years, who is probably engaged in more successful across the aisle bipartisan legislation than anybody maybe in our lifetimes, and the other one who was there a bipartisan anything that passed of significance during Trump? There may have been, and I'm just...
There was one, it was federal, it was about federal prisoners, and it was about reentry programs. There was just, that was it.
Because Trump was concerned about his own reentry down the line. So
Yeah,
they
I have to assume that's true.
Jackie, thank you for the call. 877-301-8970. Jackie's responding to what influences you. That's fine. We're particularly concerned about whether celebrities, other kinds of influencers, even newspaper endorsements matter to you anymore.
Most of the people that I can see from what we're getting on the text are basically saying that it's not that they don't necessarily listen to people who have influence, but that those people don't influence their political decisions. So they may be influenced in other respects.
But didn't you say a second ago, when you were at the beginning, when I made that comment about I can't imagine you being affected by what anybody else thinks, didn't you say something like that it's an environmental impact? Even if you're not conscious, you're not saying, well, I care what George Clooney has decided or what Jane Doe, the influencer, has decided. It seeps in, and it may become part of your decision-making, I think was your point, even if you're not conscious that's what the determining factor is.
I think that's absolutely right, especially with social media, because you're scrolling. Sometimes you're reading versions of the same thing over and over and over again, and you might not think it influences you, but it probably does.
Toonie in Rhode Island. Hey there.
Hi, Toonie.
Hi.
Hi.
I am definitely not influenced by the Taylor Swifts of the world, but Kara Swisher.
It's great.
I enjoyed hearing that she had a relationship with her back in California and her perspective on her not being a liberal. She's pretty conservative, actually, when she was in San Francisco. So I think people like that, people like you and Marjorie and Andrea.
Wow.
That's very nice.
Definitely.
When you say she, you're not talking about Kara Swisher. You're saying that when Kamala Harris was a prosecutor, she had a pretty, you called a conservative record. That's what you're saying, right?
That's what Kara Swisher was talking about, knowing her for decades and knowing her when she was there. She said, so I respect Kara Swisher. I think she's smart and, she seems to tell it like it is.
She's a brilliant interviewer,
that definitely
too.
influenced me. Yeah, she is.
Tony, thank you for the call. You know, that is, by the way, the Harris thing. I don't know if you remember when she ran for president, there was some very well-respected, I think, law professor at Berkeley or something, who wrote a piece anti-Harris, even though this may cause her to appeal more to other people, talking about how conservative she had been and how law and order focused, which may have hurt her in that primary. I would argue, if it's true, would help her in 2024.
In a general election, yeah, I think that's absolutely true. I tend to, I'm kind of rethinking whether or not it influences me. I tend to listen to historians now more than I ever have before. Historians who give you an historical perspective on what's going on now, whether or not it has any tether to history, but also their opinions about how we're dealing with some of the most unprecedented stuff. I think I listen to historians a lot.
Like who? Who's the popular?
Online, in social media, it's Kevin Cruz, Joanne Freeman, Heather Cox Richardson, I think, is an historian. I'm pretty sure she's an historian.
She is,
but I didn't even know she was an historian when I started following her. So I do tend to listen to them.
That's because you never watched her on Greater Boston years ago with me hosting. That is exactly why you didn't know. She's arguably the most well-read, other than Doris Kearns Goodwin, who we swoon every time she's here, in terms of books. I think in terms of ongoing content in her Substack thing, Richardson is probably the most read historian in America, I would think. She spends time with Biden and all these kind of things. Yeah. And actually, she spoke at that first fundraiser that Harris did after she declared. Remember, I think it was in Pittsfield with Yo-Yo Ma and James Taylor. Heather Cox Richardson was part of the deal there. Ellen in Chestnut Hill, you're on with Andrew Cabral and me, Jim Browdy.
Hey, Ellen.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I think what the biggest thing about Harris and even influencers coming out, depending on who it is that people are finally being heard. Nobody wanted Trump or Biden, and nobody was listening. And then all of a sudden, Biden steps down and starts really going after and listening to what people wanted. And I think the same thing happens where you have a Taylor Swift, where her fans believe that they hear her and she listens to them. And that sort of respect that has been going on with the Democratic Party, I think is really wonderful.
Hey, Ellen, thank you for
there is something to
your call. I think so, too.
The being heard part, or feeling like you're not being, and that tends to be generational. Because people who are invested in the system and the economy tend to have the largest voices, the tax base, and so younger people tend to get left out. I think there's now a switch in that.
By the way, this is moving before we take a break. An anonymous texter says, I'll be voting for whoever Lovesac sofa is endorsing.
What is
It's a sofa. It's a kind of sofa.
Yeah, no, but
whatever.
Does it act? Is it sentient? Is it self-aware?
Why don't you check it out and find out and see who they endorsed?
I don't think so.
We got to take a break, Andrew Cabral.
All right. Stick around. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are live from the BPL, and we're streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
Indonesia's capital has a lot of the problems most big cities face. Air pollution, gridlock, not enough green space. Oh, it's also sinking. The solution? Build a new capital from scratch.
We try to come in with almost 180 degrees opposite of what Jakarta is.
How to construct a whole new city, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And South Coast Artists, presenting their 21st annual Open Studio Tour August 17th and 18th in Tiverton and Little Compton, Rhode Island, and Dartmouth and Westport, Massachusetts. You can download the tour brochure at southcoastartists.org. And the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, providing resources and tools to help you navigate the college planning process, including customized plans of savings, loans, and guidance. More information at mefa.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Andrew Cabral sitting in for Marjorie. Marjorie is back on Monday. We're live at the library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News, and we're about 10 minutes away from some fabulous music. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about our influencer culture and the growing political power of people who make money on the internet and their ability to influence the 2024 election. at least according to a new Harvard study, which doesn't say on one hand, and on the other hand, it says unequivocally how influencers, how celebrities, the impact they could have. What do you make of it? Does it matter to you who Taylor Swift likes? She hasn't endorsed. Joe Rogan. Rogan endorsed RFK Jr., I think, the other day, but said that Kamala Harris's speech was effing amazing, which sort of something. Give us a call or a text, 877-301-8970. Do any of these kinds of people affect your vote or people you know and care about?
Mary from Nahant says if Taylor Swift does half as much for Camilla, I think she means Kamala, as she's done for Major League Football, I'm a fan.
We call that the National Football League, by the way, for that's where. Thank you very much. Okay, Jane in South Yarmouth, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Jane.
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks. I don't get influenced by celebrities, although I think a lot of people, especially young people, do.
Mm-hmm.
My big concern today is the kind of influence the media is having on their bias reporting of Trump. Even on GBH this morning, the 10 and 11 o'clock news on Trump's news conference, supposedly, said he had a news conference on the economy and he attacked Taylor Swift. Not one thing was said about the 10 blatant lies in his presentation, and I feel like we've gotten so immune to it that the major news media is not even reporting on the lies anymore.
Well, they
didn't say one thing.
I didn't hear the 10, 11.
About any of the
I hear you. I didn't hear the 10 o'clock newscast. That was part of what you said yesterday. I think that is real. If it happened, and I didn't hear it, I find it really aberrational in terms of responsible media today. You were right. It took a long, you meaning Andrea, it took a long time for the media to get there. It took them months for them to be able to say Trump was lying when he lied. But I think they have really caught up big time.
But to Jane's point, how can you continue to refer to it as a news conference on the economy when you've already listened to it? You're not reporting on it after the fact. You've listened to it, and you know that he said virtually nothing on the economy because he has no economic policy, and used it as a grievance for him. And just that, I think that's part of what Jane is talking about. She's talking about the fact that even after the fact, they're still framing it the way he wants it framed. He didn't give a news conference on the economy.
Yeah, by the way, obviously, she's talking about the NPR the first 4 minutes. I didn't hear it. I did hear NPR reporting on the press conference this morning in long form, and I think they did exactly what you wanted them to do, but maybe not on the newscast. I just didn't hear it. Stephen Melrose, you're next on Boston Public Radio.
Hi, Steve.
Welcome to the show. Hi.
Did we lose him?
Well put, Steve.
Hello?
Thank you.
Oh,
there
he
you are.
is.
We surprised him. Hi, Steve. You called us, I think.
Hey, good morning, folks.
And to you.
Hi.
I want to let you know why I support Taylor Swift, her endorsement of Kamala Harris.
She hasn't endorsed her yet, but okay, we got it. So far, so good. Go ahead. If she endorses Kamala Harris, you mean? Go ahead.
Okay, because she has a lot of influence, Taylor Swift does, with young people.
Mm-hmm.
And many people who are either 18 or will be 18 by the November election, have never voted in an election. And they love her music. And they like to dress like she does.
Yeah.
So,
got it.
And they were 10 years old when Trump was elected in 1916.
Yeah.
And they were about 14 when Trump was defeated. So they're looking for guidance. They don't know Trump that well.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift could swing the election if she endorses Kamala Harris.
Well, we shall see. Steve, thanks for your 2 cents on the issue. We really appreciate it. 877-301-8970 is the number.
Matthew from Fall River texts and says, I love Tom Brady. However, his friendship with Trump doesn't change my view of Trump. It changes my view of Tom.
Tom Brady.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good line, actually. Everybody remembers that all started when the reporter was in the clubhouse and a MAGA hat, Make America Great Again or whatever was there, and whatever it evolved.
And then Belichick's letter. that he wrote
You know,
to
and
Trump, being
which most
supportive
of us
him.
thought was phony. If you don't remember, Trump read in the New Hampshire primary in 2016 at an event. I think I got it right. He read this letter from Belichick, which almost nobody, well, I didn't believe was real. And it was real. It was this effusive,
completely real.
fawning
Completely changed my view of
endorsement
Belichick. Yeah.
of Donald Trump. So there you go.
Joan from Plymouth, how are you?
Hello, Joan.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
I think we're good.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't know if somebody like Taylor Swift can influence an election, but what I think they do is build energy and help get the vote out.
I agree with you.
So, I mean, I think that's the way they can influence and have a huge impact. And presumably they influence one section of the population more than the other, that section being, probably more Democratic. But that's how I think they can make a difference.
Well, can I tell you something? The Civic Responsibility Project at Harvard that we've been talking about agrees with you completely. It says in a story on CNN.com that celebrities can help create a, quote, culture around participation, making it fun and making it something you should care about doing, and particularly in light of the fact that their primary influence is on young people. And unlike when Joe Biden was running, where young people were split, overwhelmingly in most recent polls, they're supporting Kamala Harris. Excellent point, Joan. Thank you for the call.
And we've seen that. Even Rock the Vote, when all the commercials for Rock the Vote, and then the individual parties sometimes do their own commercials, but it really is about telling people it's civic engagement and getting out and getting people registered.
So I think we have time for one more, do we, or do we not? 877-301-8970, I think. The answer is no, we don't. So do you want to wrap this up? I always ask Marjorie if she wants to wrap up a discussion. And since you are Marjorie's whatever.
Replacement for the day?
No, replacement is not kind enough. You are you are Andrea Cabral. So why don't you, do you buy the notion that, I do totally buy the notion that there is potential in this election for the great influence by influencers?
I think more now than there ever has been. We've got full-throated social media. People have created fan bases on that social media. People have followed them everywhere. I think outside influences on this election from all quarters, including foreign countries. I think the sky's the limit on the impact they're going to have on this election.
Coming
ready
up.
to get to some music?
I think we are.
All right. So up next, it's time for Live Music Friday with a performance from the Boston Lyric Opera in partnership with Hibernian Hall. We're going to talk with Bradley Vernatter, who's the CEO and General Director of the BLO, and Harris Leftieri, who's the Creative Director of Hibernian Hall. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
But what about Donald Trump's use of her song? She's the latest musician to condemn a politician for using music at campaign rallies without permission. That and more on the Culture Show's Week in Review, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Auschwitz, Not Long Ago, Not Far Away, an exhibition featuring over 700 artifacts from the Holocaust, closing September 15th at the Castle at Park Plaza in Boston. More at theauschwitzexhibition.com. And Burton's Grill and Bar, offering weekend brunch with dishes such as cast-iron French toast, chicken and waffles, and short rib hash. A gluten-free menu is also available. Information on menus and locations at burtonsgrill.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Andrew Cabral in for Marjorie. Marjorie's back Monday. We're live at the library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. Inspired by the theme Rhythm, the Boston Lyric Opera and Hibernian Hall are teaming up for a free pop-up show tomorrow. It's called Street Stage, 10:30 to noon, that's Saturday, in Roxbury's Madison Park. BLO opera singers will perform arias from Europe and the Americas, accompanied by dynamic performances from Boston's own Afro-Latin percussionist, Cornell Coley, and his ensemble. For more information, you go to BLO.org. We're joined now at the interview desk by Bradley Vernatter, CEO and General Director of the Boston Lyric Opera. Bradley, it's great to see you again. And Harris Leftieri, Creative Director of Hibernian Hall. It's great to meet you, Harris. Thank you so much for being here. In a couple of minutes, we will hear from Cornell Coley, but first, soprano Angela Yam. She's accompanied by Brett Hodgson on piano. They're performing the Gershwin's great I Got Rhythm.
Days can be sunny with never a sigh. Don't need what money can
Spectacular. Congratulations to both of you.
It just floors me. People just open their mouths and this amazing thing just comes out so effortlessly, or seemingly effortlessly. I know you work very hard at it. All right, so I'm going to start with you, Harris, who, by the way, people should know, we're both Boston College alums. Go Eagles. We found that out this morning. Hibernian Hall has a pretty long and storied history in Roxbury. And in the Boston community, actually, the larger Boston community. Tell us a little bit about your connection to it, how you came to be the creative director at Hibernian Hall, but also how the collaboration with Boston Lyric Opera came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think of Hibernian Hall, you think of the space that we have created to bring community together. And you cannot help but think of our parent organization, which is Madison Park Development Corporation, that came out of a lot of tension that happened in the 60s in Roxbury. So Madison fought the good fight for us to build our community in Roxbury. And Hibernian Hall is the child of that. Our mission is to make community happen, to bring our community together, and to find a space for our residents to share their culture and to continue to build that culture. So when I'm an immigrant myself, so when I got involved with Hibernian, it was as a theater director. That's the first time I was introduced to Hibernian Hall. And I remember going through the doors and I saw the space and I was like, oh, this is amazing. So from there, I joined their board. And I started getting more and more involved in the mission of Hibernian, in telling our stories, in bringing them to life. And here I am, a few years later. Now I'm the artistic director of the space, and I couldn't have it any other way.
So, Brad, in a second, tell us about the collaboration. Before you do, what's happening tomorrow?
Tomorrow is one of Boston Lyric Opera street stage performances. Angela Yam and Brett will be performing on stage with one of our other emerging artists, Fred Vaness, as well. And we're joining forces with Hibernian Hall to participate in this beautiful community that Harris was just describing. It'll be a mix of songs like what Angela sang, other opera arias, and some really fantastic percussion and rhythm work with Cornell. Yeah.
And by the way, you're supposed to say it's free.
And it's free. Oh my gosh, it's free to the public, free for everyone.
Really well in this state.
Open to all. Come bring a chair and sit down and enjoy.
It may be obvious, but why does it matter to take this kind of music out to communities and make it accessible to people who wouldn't ordinarily see it in a concert hall?
It's important because we don't want our community to have to leave their space to find high quality art that's accessible and original. So we want to tell these stories, and I want you to think of tomorrow's event as a trip, a journey that we're taking through culture and art and history. And we want to find our similarities, and we want to celebrate our differences.
Can we talk to Angela for a second? That was unbelievable. Why does this, is her mic on? Can you say something?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thank you so much.
Why does this street stage thing matter to you?
I think it's really important for every artist to have the opportunity to perform for an audience that might never have heard you before, might never have heard anything like you before. It reminds me of the first time that I fell in love with opera, and it was something as spontaneous as seeing a performance. I wasn't expecting it, I didn't know what to expect, and that's what I hope people get from tomorrow's performance.
But your route to opera was more circuitous, I think, than most people. So you did piano, you did violin. The notion that you stumbled upon that gorgeous voice by accident just amazes me. So how did you get there?
You're right. It was very circuitous. My parents are both scientists, and they fully expected me to be just like them. And surprise, when you put your child through music lessons, maybe they fall in love with it. And so when I started singing, it was a lot of hard work, but I also had this rich musical background, and so it was a very easy transition from piano to violin to finally to voice.
The beauty, from what I know, the diversity of music tomorrow. Have you heard Cornell perform?
Yes, I have.
What do you
amazing.
I know I'm going to put you on the spot. It's really tough. What do you think of his work?
I think it's amazing. And we were chatting in the green room about how both of us fall in love with performing music with other people and for other people. And so, even though what we do are different instruments, different styles, what connects us is that love and connection to community. And I hope that's what people see when they come to our show tomorrow.
I didn't even know we had a green room, Angela. I want you to know. But it's thrilling to hear you say that. So we're going to hear Cornell in a couple of minutes. Angela, you were fabulous. Brad, thank you so much. You were great.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
So, Brad, I want to ask you, add a little bit to how the collaboration came to be, but I want to talk to you about your space, the new space, the 14,000 square feet you have in Fort Point. It's gorgeous. So talk about those two things. You got only a couple of minutes, but give it your best shot.
Of course. Well, we started collaborating with Harris and the great folks at Hibernian Hall in Madison Park 2 years ago. We started conversations, and our first project together was a new commission in partnership with the city of Boston. It was called The Wanderer's Tethering, and it was commissioned with text by Boston's poet laureate, Portia Oleowola, and Boston-based composer Mason Bynes. And that was just such a wonderful project together that we were able to bring to life in their space. And we were so inspired not only by the artists that we were collaborating with, but by the great work that Harris and the team at Madison Park has done to create an art space that is a community civic convening space. And that's really inspired us in thinking about the responsibility and the stewardship we have as we take on our Opera and Community Studios, which is a new arts and cultural and community space in Fort Point right along the channel.
Can you just tell people what that space looks like? And how immersive it is? Because you're surrounded by artists who have their working, I don't know if it's working and living lofts.
Yes.
I think it's both. But tell people about this amazing space in Fort Point.
Yeah, so Boston Lyric Opera's Opera and Community Studios are located at Midway Artist Studios in Fort Point, which is an artist live-work building. We are one of 5 cultural tenants on the ground floor and occupy about 16,000 square feet of space. And on the upper levels are over 100 artist live-work studios. It's a real arts ecosystem, artists and arts organizations and cultural ecosystem in Fort Point, from individual artists living and working there for more than 50 years to organizations like BLO and our partners like the Cultural Equity Incubator.
Harris, did one of you just say the city's involved in tomorrow or supporting tomorrow? Brad, you're nodding.
Yeah.
Starting with you, Harris, we talk a lot about how our country, our communities are so far beyond so many other cultures around the world in terms of public support for the art. And the other thing we hear from people like you, whether they're from the BSO or BLO or whatever they are, is how critical art like this is in stressful times, which is almost all we live in. Is government as a whole getting the message that this matters? It's not just an extra thing, or are they still lagging behind there, Harris?
I think it's slow progress. I think there's a lot of support. We're doing a great job at sending our message more out there and making sure that we speak on the mission of Hibernian and Madison Park and what we're doing to tell our stories. And I think throughout the years and throughout a lot of collaborations that we've had, including the collaboration with Boston Lyric Opera, that message is being spread to more and more communities.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I will. Is Woo different? I mean, I went to I think it's called Cities Series or something, when Woo played Mozart at with the BSO. I mean, and she said to us the next week she was terrified, but she was brilliant. And it seems to me that sent exactly the right message. And she's got a piano in her office, as I think everybody knows. Is she different from this is not to criticize Marty Walsh or anybody else, but does she have a special commitment to this kind of thing?
Absolutely she does. And to see a leader of our city who understands and appreciates the benefits and of what arts and culture brings to our community, the health, the well-being, mental health, the ability to collaborate, teamwork, it improves so many aspects of our lives. And we're seeing that with her and her office's support of our street stage and other initiatives as well. Our street stage is supported by the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture and the city's neighborhood development grant.
That's great. That's terrific.
So what can people expect on Saturday? I know if and I'm sure we'll give out the website people can go to find out what they can bring to be comfortable. What do people get for free tomorrow?
They get access to the entire event. They will get they'll get a chance to taste some of some great lemonade that one of our collaborators, actually, shout out to Lime Life, is going to bring to the space. And they'll get an exposure to music from around the world. Yep.
I'm sorry, continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
And anywhere, we'll start from Europe and we'll go to Africa and we'll just unite everything.
And there's
together.
a dance party.
And there's a dance party. So it's
Do you not know about that? Did you just learn about that a couple of seconds ago?
Well, I'm going to bring my shoes and that's what I'm doing.
Can I return to a variation on the theme that I did with you a minute ago? How are the schools doing on this thing? We know that in tough economic times, the first thing to go are arts, sports, that sort of stuff. Anything that enriches the life of a kid beyond, the 3 or the 4 R's, whatever the hell they are. And we've talked to Ernie Bach Jr. about his foundation that provides instruments. But it seems to me that while you're trying to create an interest in performance that people might not ordinarily hear, it's wonderful you're doing it, but it's here and then it's episodic. I don't mean that critically, but it is. It would really matter if there was an opportunity every single day for a kid to have an instrument that he or she could play and consider theirs. Are the schools doing it, or are they still second-tiering the importance of music education?
So I can't fully speak on what all the schools are doing in the area, but I can talk about the programming that we have implemented.
Oh, please do. Yeah, great.
We work with a lot of youth organizations and a lot of youth programs to make sure that we introduce them to arts and culture in the space. So currently we are working with a youth group called Art Heals, and we just wrapped up a 4-month film project where our young people got to learn how to write a script, how to produce, how to direct, and how to act in it. So that is the product of that is a short film that we put together, and that is our way at Madison Park and Hibernian Hall of not keeping things in silos and just continuing the mission of just the arts. They started with us, but they will continue through our young people.
Brad, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, this is why this partnership between BLO and Hibernian Hall is just so easy and makes so much sense. We have a similar program that's called Create Your Own Opera, and next year is the 15th year that Create Your Own Opera will be a program in the Boston Public School System and the greater Boston area. This is a program similar to what Harris described, where youth from grades 2 through high school create their own ideas, their own librettos and texts, their own compositions, everything up to rehearsing and producing and performing the piece. And last year we were in 25 different classrooms, over 500 students participated in creating original works and original stories.
Can I ask you, what do you see a change in the kids for having participated? And can you describe a little bit of that? Because I kind of think exposure to art makes you kinder, and it makes you feel seen and heard. Have you seen that in the kids?
Absolutely, absolutely. Every time I attend a performance in the classrooms in one of our Create Your Own Opera performances, it's palpable in the room. And I was actually just reading from one of our team members, Kay Steele. I was reading a report on Create Your Own Opera, and some of the comments from the youth participants was that it made me more brave. We made friends.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we made friends part.
Yeah.
Because school is tough.
It is.
School is really hard, and that just made my day. Hearing that just made my day.
Life's pretty tough too. Do you know?
It is generally, but it's tougher when you're a kid.
So to get information on this deal tomorrow, BLO.org, is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So can we talk to Cornell for a second?
We heard you.
Hey, Cornell, you want to come up to the mic for a second?
Hi.
Hi there, Cornell. How are you?
I'm feeling great.
Well, you're looking pretty good, I should say, too. What's that thing in your hand?
This is the magical musical bow for capoeira. It's a Brazilian martial art dance and sport, and this is called a berimbau. If you say the word fast, it sounds like bedimbau, but it's named after the wood it's made from, biriba wood.
And you're going to do something, the thing you're doing for us is Brazil, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I said I'd do a Brazilian medley because I thought I could fit more into my time, but I'm just focusing on capoeira music today. But I did bring a cuica, which is a friction drum, which was developed in the Patron of the Arts home, where we're going to have our big show about Brazil at Hibernian Hall, October 18th and 19th. And I brought an agogo bell and a pandeiro, which are all typical Afro-Brazilian instruments. And this is the capoeira instrument. It's pretty unique looking. It originated in Africa. Back then, they didn't have the wire from the steel-belted tire that I'm having here.
That's great.
They use animal gut. But it's also been used, this instrument, in other countries, Asia and different South American countries. Yeah, this is pretty much I don't know, people think it was a hunting bow before. I don't know.
Looks like a hunting bow, does it not?
Turn it around the other way, it sure does.
It does.
And just so
like
people
an
know,
arrow, too.
Cornell is a percussionist extraordinaire. There is literally, I don't think there's a single instrument of percussion that he does not play amazingly well. So we are very much looking forward to hearing this medley.
I appreciate that confidence very much. I can't say I can live up to all of that.
Well, if you don't live up to it, we're really screwed, is what I can say. So
this one I got covered.
You got it covered?
Good.
So are we going to do Brazil, or are you doing a medley? What are you doing?
I'm going to do just Brazil.
Cornell
Okay.
Copley, we can't wait to hear it. Here he is.
Thank you. Stepping over to the other mic. Okay, if you can hear me well. I don't hear an echo yet. Should I go forward?
Keep talking.
I'll keep talking. This is the rhythm for the masters of capoeira. It's a particular rhythm I'm going to start with.
Can we get this mic happening, you guys?
Yeah. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you speak, you have to speak at the other one, so you got to perform. Our apologies.
Okay,
We screwed it
so
up.
go forward.
Is that okay?
That's fine. I'll go.
Take it away.
Okay. Eu nasci na Bahia, capital de Salvador, e tudo que eu tenho, e Deus que me deu, tudo que eu sei, meu mestre me ensinou. Viva meu mestre da cidade, e viva meu mestre camarada, viva capoeira, e viva capoeira camarada, viva Salvador, e viva Salvador camarada. Ai, 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 Dona Maria, como vai você? Ai, 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 jogo bonito eu quero aprender. Vem da Bahia, vem São Salvador, jogar capoeira, eu mostrar o meu valor. Yay! The rhythm for a master. The rhythm for regular capoeira players. The rhythm when the mounted police are coming. Meant to imitate the hooves of the horses. Time to go.
Thank you, Cornell.
Thank you both. Thank you all for being here. We've been speaking with Bradley Verneder, CEO of the Boston Lyric Orchestra. Did I say Boston Lyric Opera?
Boston Lyric Opera. We are Boston Lyric Opera.
Oh, it says
Yeah.
orchestra on my
Yeah.
sheet. It is Boston
We
Lyric
love
Opera.
the orchestra too.
Sorry about that. Harris Leftieri, creative director of Hibernian Hall, and our musicians today were Angela Lamb, and accompanied by Brett Hodgson and Cornell Copley. Thank you all for joining us. That was wonderful.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more information about tomorrow's street stage at Roxbury's Madison Park, go to blo.org. It's free. Coming up after the noon news, GBH's Callie Crossley is here. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We're live from the BPL and streaming online at
The Issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Mass General Brigham Health Plan. With you every day. For more information, you can visit massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. Looking for binge-worthy period pieces, puzzling mysteries, or passionate romance? Well, GBH has it all in one place. Whatever your drama destination, start streaming anytime at gbh.org/passport.
A proposed lithium mine in Serbia is spurring protests over its potential impact on the environment.
We are saying no to corporate powers that are going to extract our country and leave trash that's going to poison future generations.
But the mineral is in high demand because it is crucial for the batteries that run electric vehicles. More on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
I'm statewide and features editor Jennifer Moore, and you're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, ahead on hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. GBH's Callie Crossley on the enthusiasm among Martha's Vineyard's black donors for the Harris campaign and the New York Times ending local political endorsements. Plus, the Boston Globe's columnist Marcela Garcia on Trump's latest deport them all rhetoric. Is this the new bill?
List Cy Montgomery on a pair of rare wild horses. Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The White House is condemning Israeli settlers' attack on a village in the West Bank that killed at least one Palestinian resident. Local officials said settlers raided the village overnight and set fire to houses and cars. They say a man was fatally shot. The Israeli government joined the United States in condemning the violence, but officials in the West Bank accuse Israel of supporting the Israeli settlers and enabling the attack. A second day of ceasefire talks on the war in Gaza have concluded in Doha, with Egypt, Qatar, and the U.S. acting as mediators between Israel and Hamas. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf has the latest.
An Israeli official speaking anonymously to NPR in line with protocol told us on Friday that, quote, the gaps have been narrowed between Israel and Hamas. According to that official, there are two main remaining issues. One, who will control a strip of land along Gaza's border with Egypt, which Israel took over in May. And two, whether Palestinians returning to North Gaza will be screened to allow only unarmed civilians. Meanwhile, fighting continues in Gaza. The Israeli military issued more evacuation orders for several neighborhoods in the south. And on Thursday, the death toll in Gaza crossed the grim milestone of 40,000, according to health officials there.
That's NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reporting. A Category 2 hurricane is closing in on Bermuda with top winds of 100 miles per hour. Forecasters say Ernesto could produce dangerous storm surge and life-threatening flooding on the island of roughly 64,000 residents and likely many more tourists. Before heading for the British territory, the storm caused power outages across Puerto Rico. Hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses across the U.S. territory are grappling with sporadic electricity and water service while under excessive heat. The site of a violent race riot in Illinois has been designated as a national monument. In 1908, thousands of white residents attacked the black community of Springfield. NPR's Kristen Wright has more.
The administration says the new monument will recognize a painful but important piece of history. On August 14, 1908, mobs of white residents stormed the town of Springfield, Illinois, angry over the transfer of two black rape and murder suspects out of the county jail to another lockup 60 miles away. Over 2 days, rioters lynched two black men. Hundreds were injured. Businesses were looted and homes burned down. The riot served as a catalyst for civil rights, leading to the founding of the NAACP. The National Park Service will now work with the local community to develop and preserve the site and welcome visitors. Kristen Wright, NPR News, Washington.
U.S. stocks are trading slightly higher this hour. You're listening to NPR News.
From the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Craig Lamolt. Beacon Hill lawmakers passed a sweeping bill in an informal session yesterday to tackle shortcomings and disparities in maternal health care. GBH's Hannah Reale reports.
The bill is broad. For the state's dwindling number of birth centers, there will be fewer hurdles to keeping them open. And for the small number of midwives who facilitate home births, there will now be a licensing process. The list goes on. More mental health screenings, licensing for lactation consultants.
All about addition. We just took all the strengths and the best parts of our bill.
That's State Rep Marjorie Decker, who says she's grateful it's passed. And advocates like Neighborhood Birth Center's Catherine Rushforth are thrilled as well.
I literally burst into tears. Like, it's a huge success. Like 90% of what we asked for is probably in there.
The bill now heads to Governor Healy. Hannah Reale, GBH News, 89.7.
More than 100 delegates from Massachusetts are headed to Chicago this weekend ahead of the Democratic National Convention. That includes Governor Maura Healey and members of the state's all-Democratic congressional delegation. Starting Monday, they'll host a daily state party breakfast with delegates. Governor Healey is set to take part of a panel discussion at the LGBTQ caucus, and Senator Ed Markey plans to participate in a climate event on Wednesday. Healey will also join actress Julie Louis-Dreyfus for a panel on Wednesday featuring the country's Democratic women governors. The convention goes through Thursday, and GBH will have on-the-ground coverage throughout the week, so stay tuned. Partly sunny today, a high near 80, going down to the mid-60s overnight, and it looks like a pretty nice weekend. Partly sunny on Saturday with highs in the low 80s and pretty much the same on Sunday.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include JTV, Jewelry Television, a TV shopping network offering a range of colored gemstone jewelry, including tanzanite, turquoise, and ruby. Available on TV or at jtv.com.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. Marjorie Egan is off today. She is back on Monday. Sitting in is the former Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral. She's also the former Sheriff of Suffolk County, and a couple other things on the side. Hi, Andrea. Nice to see you again. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Well, there was that marijuana thing, but we don't have space for that. No, I don't mean a bad thing. You ran a wonderful business.
No, there was the other thing, too.
What was the other thing? Oh, that other thing. That's right. Okay, we're live from the library and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. If you want to know what the other thing was, just Google it, okay? We're joined now at the desk by Callie Crossley. Callie's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights right here on 89.7 at 6. You can also hear her Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. She's also the co-host. This is the longest introduction, like in history. She's also the co-host for GBH's The Culture Show, which not only airs daily at 2 o'clock on 89.7, its weekly Week in Review, which is on Friday, is from the library. So stick around at 2 o'clock. Callie, it's great to see you. Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Callie.
Thank you.
Callie, you are a long-time denizen of Martha's Vineyard. You know all things Martha's Vineyard and Oak Bluffs. When Obama ran for president, I think it's fair to say that there was a great deal of excitement around his potential presidency. Compare that to what you're seeing with Kamala Harris now.
Well, I would say it's pretty equal because, and of course, you know, the vice president has just been in the race for a short period of time. I think what's different is that the ramping up of the enthusiasm, the adjusting to what was already in place. What people may not know as a context is that Martha's Vineyard has been a huge fundraising location in the summer for years now. I can't attend these political things because I'm a journalist, but they're everywhere. It's where I learned about a lot of candidates I never heard of. And when I say fundraising for everybody, that's across the country. So the Westmores would have fundraisers here. And it may be that one of the earliest times I was paying attention to Kamala Harris was because of a fundraiser for her when she was running for Attorney General or running for the Senate seat. This has just been common. So the minute that she announced, I was on the island when he announced, everybody said, okay, we're blowing up all the fundraising efforts that were already in place. For her specifically, her sister has a house there. She's a familiar person in the summer visiting for others, raising money or not. And it also fell on the week of this huge sorority gathering on Martha's Vineyard called Pinkwell. Now, I am not a member of the AKAs. That's the Alpha Kappa Alphas, founded in 1908. I am a member of the distinguished and dynamic Delta Sigma Theta.
We know that.
To be clear.
Yes, we do.
But I want to give props to the women of the AKAs because they have built this Pinkwell thing into something fabulously beautiful and really connected.
And Pinkwell is a takeoff on Inkwell.
On Inkwell.
So people that don't know.
The Inkwell at Oak Bluffs now turns into Pinkwell because they line that beach with huge pink umbrellas, a lot of pink and green, whatever. It was on fire this year, more than any other time possibly. And all of the members of the sorority who are so proud of her, it's a nonpartisan organization, so that's not part of it. But they formed a PAC. Some members of the AKA have formed a political PAC so they can be even more involved in supporting her. They're so proud. And it's just, all of that is showing up and showing out in ways that you couldn't have imagined. It's really been something strong and amazing. And that's, across the board, the fundraising. This is a spot. If you're interested in participating in fundraisers and learning something about politics, be there in August every year.
Is it because it's surrounded by water? Or is there something else that's special about Martha's Vineyard that makes it such a draw? I mean, we're known. We said this, I think, yesterday on the show. Massachusetts is known generally as the ATM. The
I heard
Party.
that. Yeah.
But Martha's Vineyard has a particular carve out within that.
Yeah.
Is there something special?
Well,
other than the obvious?
Yeah, of course. And the obvious is that it's a resort. But the maybe not so obvious for some, though I think people may now know this, is that it's one of the there's 3 historical beach resorts for Black people. Home ownership on the island has always been somewhat vibrant and goes back a long time. And so there are long ties there, not just from people in Massachusetts. It's a draw from people all around the country. I would say you could hold a caucus of people from California quite easily at any time during the summer because there's just that much interest and fun, and it's now become a huge networking possibility, not just for fun things like your career, but for political fundraisers as well. So, Martha's Vineyard stands out as a place where you want to be if you're trying to make a case to some people that may not know you or others that you want to get to know you, certainly in the political sphere.
By the way, just 1 second to touch on the thing you mentioned, Massachusetts in general is an ATM for the Democrats. We had Alan Solomon on a few weeks ago. He's the former treasurer of the DNC and then the ambassador to Spain.
Yeah.
He raised more money, he and his effort raised more money per capita in 2008 for Obama than any state in America. And he's a really skillful guy, but there's a lot of money here that goes to Democratic
So he was top
candidates.
fundraiser in Massachusetts. I want to give a shout out to Carol Fulp. Second highest fundraiser in Black woman. And so, there's a lot of that. She has a home on the Martha's Vineyard, I'm sure. She's busy this week doing a lot of things. So
Kelly, there was a story in the New York Times the other day that I found really troubling, that the New York Times said that it would no longer be endorsing local candidates. And local doesn't just mean city council in New York. It means state senators, state reps, or whatever they call them there, assembly people, Congress people, that sort of thing. It would continue to endorse in the presidential race. The editor of the editorial page gave no reason as to why this was. We were discussing influencers. This is a whole separate issue. But I have to say, in lower races where I don't really know, and I like to think I do my work and do my research, I take my role as a voter pretty seriously, I often don't know nearly enough to vote, and I go to a newspaper or a news outlet that I trust that vets these people and interviews them, and I often go where they go if I subscribe to their notion. What do you, I think it's horrible, and by the way, apparently it's spreading. This no endorsement. What do you make of this? And what do you make of this?
Well, my first question was why. So I'm right on your page. And then they've made a differentiation between the endorsements that they will continue to do for the presidential candidates, but not for the local. And for the reasons you said, I was just saying to Jamie, executive producer of this show before, I consider myself fairly well informed along the way, but at the end, I'm like, wait a minute, who is so-and-so and what did they do? And you can go to those op-eds and you don't have to take their take on it, but they give you the details of both the opponent and the person.
Because they interview these people and they research these people, right?
Here's what they said about this, here's what they said about that. And it's very valuable. I think what's happening here in terms of some of the papers moving away from it is they feel like people are not embracing it because, people don't read newspapers or maybe they don't follow it. But I think there is a way. We have all these digital platforms to get that same information out. So this, to me, feels, I don't know, lazy? Is that the word to use? Because they've been covering these people. They know all the details.
Or an abject lack of transparency at a minimum from the Fourth Estate, which demands transparency in decision-making from everyone else it covers.
That's right.
So it's one thing to decide not to do it. I think it's an entirely different and worse thing in some respects to not say to people why you think it's no longer effective. To Jim's point, there were a bunch of people sitting there going, but it was important to me.
Right.
So if you're going to stop doing it, and you still want me to consider you to be the old gray lady,
right?
Which is what the New York Times likes to be considered. Tell me why you've suddenly stopped deciding. You suddenly decided that I'm no longer privy to the insight that you have on these candidates.
And why not then? If you're not going to do it, why are you continuing to do the presidential candidates?
Right. That's the other thing.
Right, which are the people you know the most about and arguably need the least help with.
Right.
By the way, in the audience here, how many of you have ever voted for a candidate for any level office based upon a newspaper endorsement of that candidate? Was it like maybe a third?
That's a lot.
Actually, there's an employee of the Boston Globe here who's going to talk to us in a minute who did that.
Yeah.
I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but let's beat it for one more minute. It's totally is untransparent a word?
Yes,
non-transparent?
non-transparent.
To not say why we're doing this.
Right.
And maybe there is they're pretty smart people over there. Maybe there's a decent reason. I don't know of one. But how can you do something that's been a tradition forever, drop it, and then not tell your consumers why you're dropping it?
If your point is you don't think people are reading it in the paper, figure out a way. You have all of these platforms.
That's a
New York
wonderful
Times.
point.
Okay, figure out a way to get it on a platform people are looking at. I mean, that's part of what you're supposed to be doing as a media and journalism outlet.
One of the other, so the Baltimore Sun is also not doing this, and then there's this sort of global newspaper ownership company that owns a bunch of newspapers across the country. They've stopped doing it. One of them made the comment about part of it is that it's confusing for people. People keep confusing. They don't separate out the editorial section, which is opinion, from news. And I thought, that's not a reason to not do this. That so
make it less confusing. Put at the top, this is an opinion.
Right.
How hard is that?
Right.
It's under the opinion page.
Yeah.
I don't know. By the way, that's Alden Global. They cut everything else.
Alden
so I guess
Global, right.
so they figured, why don't we just cut this too?
It makes me think there's something more. I'm cynical, but it makes me think there's something more nefarious about stopping to do it.
Me too. And
Can
I
I
don't
stay
know.
on this one more second? I'm sorry, I'm obsessed with this. How many people in the room who are Massachusetts voters know who your governor's counselor is?
Oh, I can't. Oh, this is...
Okay, that's about 3 people.
Yeah.
This is the
now
case
you're
in
gonna
point.
whip me up.
No, by the way, you can vote for whoever you want. But this morning, for example, and I told the story before, I didn't know who my governor's counselor was 7, 8 years ago, and I voted for the father of a kid who was standing out with a sign because she persuaded me. This morning, the Globe endorsed Mara Dolan for a governor over the incumbent Marilyn Devaney. And by the way, you can ignore that, embrace whatever you want. I'm not endorsing anybody. But that's to the people in this room, 95% of whom don't even know who their governor's counselor is. Myself, and I happen to now. I didn't know then. So it's proof positive how important this thing is, particularly in lower races. So
I know we can have another conversation about the governor's council, period. But I agree with you.
By the way, we've had my old television show. We had the editor, the woman who used to be at the Globe, Kingsbury, who's now the editor. Invite her, and let's see if we can get her in the next few weeks or in September to explain why she's doing what she's doing. We're talking.
And I just want to say, and I know Marcelo Garcia is here, but I can't imagine the Globe ever deciding to not.
I hope not.
I hope they don't.
You're on the editorial board, aren't you?
Yeah.
Are they talking about this? No, she just said no. You can't hear that? And she seems to be telling the truth. So that is a very good thing. Marcelo's going to join us in about 10 minutes or so.
Excellent. Callie, I read this story. It's a Newsweek, and actually kind of almost burst out laughing. It says that the mayor of Palm Beach has decided to explore closing Mar-a-Lago because the residents there don't feel safe. A lot of people don't know there's actually a really fraught history between Mar-a-Lago and the Palm Beach community, the Palm Beach political or elected officials, sometimes in terms of not paying fees and taxes, which that's basically a national issue with Trump. But tell us about this story about what it would mean if they ended up closing Mar-a-Lago, or closing the road to Mar-a-Lago.
Well, it's going to mean all kinds of traffic headaches. So imagine I think of it in terms of the tunnel and all of those issues when we close down the tunnel here. I get why they don't feel safe. They don't know often how many people are going to Mar-a-Lago, who some of them should require security or who's there, all of that. And it's the Secret Service that closed South Ocean Boulevard that runs along Mar-a-Lago about a month ago, and they did that after the assassination attempt. But this has been going back and forth for years, as you've said, and there's no plans to reopen the road. Here's the thing that I think is interesting, because this shut down through November 5th, the election day. I would argue that it's not going to be better on the other side of Election Day, no matter what happens, but here they are. So they're like shutting off part of their communities. As you said, there's money involved here that's not happening. And they treat the people like, we're not really connected. You're not really connected to us in this state. We're just like an island unto ourselves. So it's kind of nasty, neighborly in terms of everything else as well.
Have either of you ever been on the road right outside Mar-a-Lago?
No.
Oh, well, I have.
Oh,
and as a matter of fact, when I was in Palm Beach, you were in Palm Beach, Jim? Yes, I was. Staying at a friend's house in March of 2023. I called in to this very radio program. Here's me, and here is Marjorie, and here is me. March 31st, 2023.
Okay.
I am illegally parked across the street from Mar-a-Lago, on my honor. And I just drove by maybe a huge pro-Trump demonstration of maybe 9 people across the street.
Oh, no.
It is, in all seriousness, I mean, to go to sleep a mile away from the guy who is the first indicted president, former president in U.S. history, I have to say, it was relatively surreal.
Now, by the way, not only was that surreal, what unfortunately was not incorporated into that brilliant reporting from the scene by me is immediately after I hung up with Marjorie and whoever was hosting that day, I was driving a friend's car who was kind enough to give me his condo and driving his car too, at which point I hung up with Marjorie, and a second later I rear-ended a Trump pickup truck on the road outside Mar-a-Lago, and in sort of fitting, the car that I had borrowed was almost totaled, and the pickup truck was totally unimpacted by the exchange. And that was my story outside Mar-a-Lago. What do you think of that?
I think it's
Thank you.
typical.
I appreciate that.
I do want to add one thing. This is really, it's not just an inconvenience, but it impacts people, caregivers who are, these roads are messed up and they're afraid that they can't get first responders to the people that need help in time because of all of this caca going on.
You know, the other thing that I was struck by with that with that story, though, was how much since the, and I'm going to use air quotes very sarcastically, and I know people won't like it, but assassination attempt on Donald Trump, they have now increased Secret Service protection every place he goes, and that includes Mar-a-Lago.
That's right.
So there's the issue of the exorbitant amount of money that we are now basically paying to have his properties protected, whether he is there or not, and the impact of that extra security just around Mar-a-Lago and their comings and goings, to the point that you just made about caregivers. A ride that would take them 10 minutes is now taking them an hour to get to their loved ones or the people that they're caring for.
But I appreciate it, but what's the alternative? Every former president gets Secret Service protection. When they attempt to assassinate you, they correctly up the protection, and it is an inconvenience. Apparently, when he's at on his Fifth Avenue penthouse, they often shut down all of right outside him, Fifth Avenue, which means he can't even drive downtown.
Yeah, but
he is a former president.
No, I got that part, but this is a very small situation, this footprint. So it seems to me there can be some kind of thought put into, we're going to have to protect him, we're going to have to figure this out, but allowing for vehicles that may need to get through, there can be some kind of signal. I don't know, some word, some whatever. Something can happen.
And the problem is that he, unlike protecting other presidents who, go home, they may have more than one home, but they go home. He uses Mar-a-Lago for events to make money. So that's where the hundreds of people are coming in and making it generally less safe and costing more money to secure the...
But it is his residence. I mean, it's his legal residence.
No, it is.
It is his legal residence.
But something has to happen there. I think they could work that out.
I just defended Donald Trump. I'm going to be struck by lightning at 2:05.
I'm not walking anywhere near you when we leave here. I'm just saying.
We're talking to Callie Crossley.
So, Callie, I didn't actually... Shame on me. I didn't know that this was true, but... Massachusetts, apparently, Governor Healy made, we now have Black Philanthropy Month.
Yeah.
It is. It's August. It's this month. I was completely, to my great shame, was unaware of it. Talk a little bit about the significance of actually designating a month and then the state of Black philanthropy historically and where we kind of would like it to be.
Well, it's significant because traditionally and currently, Black-led nonprofits, this also includes Latino nonprofits, operate on very small budgets. In this case, we're talking specifically about $30,000 a year or less. It is very difficult to raise money. I've done stories on this. We've talked about this. There are now very specific organizations that work to try to address and get funding to these small groups and organizations and efforts that otherwise would be overlooked. I do want to say that one thing that was left out of this piece that I think should be mentioned is the Commonwealth Fund, which is put together by some movers and shakers, specifically a lot of Black and Latino ones, to address this gap. And there's move on the Latinx community to do the same thing because they're recognizing how huge the gap is. And you can't find Mackenzie Scott on every corner, as we know. She's about the only one that we know now that just gives the money and no strings attached, and there you go. So it's important to know that all of these very interesting, from arts to social services, where the gaps are being met by these innovative, a lot of young people involved in these philanthropy efforts, are hanging on by a thread because they just don't get the attention because they're small or not known, and they don't get the money. So to have a recognition of what they're doing and what the work is doing and why it is important is great. And to have an opportunity to also synchronize some of these efforts, I think, is great too.
Okay, so this is the moment in our weekly visit with Callie where she tells us every detail about Under the Radar and absolutely nothing about the culture show.
That's right.
So take it away, Callie, please. Thank you.
Well, we're putting our finger on the pulse, and we're talking about South Asian women in politics because Vice President Harris is a South Asian woman in politics. We're also talking about the South Asian voter bloc, which can be significant in a campaign. We're talking about that will be decided on the margins. They bring a voting bloc that can very well fill in the margins.
And J.D. Vance's wife is South Asian.
We're talking about her role, Nikki Haley, VP Harris, talking about the Indian Impact Fund, which is a strategy, is an organization that strategizes around raising money and coalescing groups like this. Because Desi's Decide, there's a whole lot of memes going on, really supporting and explaining why and how Vice President Harris is being embraced by her community. So often people said, as you know, it was just recently said that by the former president that he didn't know she was Black because all he knew that she was South Asian. She's both, and contrary to what a lot of stuff is out there on some of this disinformation campaigns, she's been actively both all her life. So there you go.
By the way,
so
just on this for a second.
Yeah.
Did you both see the nauseating comments from this disgusting white supremacist who Trump had dinner with at Mar-a-Lago, Nick Fuentes?
Yes, he's in our piece.
No, he is. Okay,
yes,
we can leave it at that.
Yes.
Just listen to the show. It's disgusting. And he's attacking the wife, attacking the kid because the kid's name is Vivek.
Right.
I mean, really.
We got it.
I'm sure you do. What else?
Well, we had to revisit the sophomore edition of the Boston's summer mixtape. You know, we're the only city with an official mixtape. The whole point of this is to raise up the local talent here, which is fantastic. So we got the producers on to talk to us about it and play a lot of the music. It's really wonderful.
Okay, so here's where you can whisper something that's on the Culture Show at 2 o'clock. Under your breath. Go ahead.
Okay, well, you probably heard that Jenna Rollins died. We're going to talk about her.
Woman
There you go.
under the influence, one of the great films of all time, by the way.
There you go. I gave you something.
Brilliant. There you go. Not much, Kelly.
Never
It's
say
nice
I didn't give you anything.
2 o'clock right here live in the Boston Public
Thank you,
Library.
Callie. You're
Thank you so much.
We've been speaking with Callie Crossley, host of Under the Radar, Sunday nights here at 89.7 at 6 p.m. You can also hear her Callie commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition, and she co-hosts The Culture Show, Quiet as It's Kept, daily right after our show at 2 p.m. on 89.7's GBH. Up next, Boston Globe Associate Editor and columnist Marcela Garcia. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL, streaming online at YouTube.
A proposed lithium mine in Serbia is spurring protests over its potential impact on the environment.
We are saying no to corporate powers that are going to extract our country and leave trash that's going to poison future generations.
But the mineral is in high demand because it is crucial for the batteries that run electric vehicles. More on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Adventure Park at Heritage Museums and Gardens. Zip line and climbing trails for all ages, 7 days a week this summer, rain or shine. More at myadventurepark.com. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie's off. She's back Monday. Andrew Cabral, kind enough to sit in live from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming online at youtube.com/GBHnews. We're joined now at the desk by Marcela Garcia. She is an associate editor and columnist at the Boston Globe. She also authors the bilingual Mira column. Marcela, it's great to see you.
Thank you for
see
having
you.
me.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
By the way, speaking of Mira, I got my email notification for the newsletter yesterday because I'm signed up to.
Good.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank
so
you.
listen, we had you sitting over there and we kind of forced you to weigh in on the New York Times thing. But I want to ask you, thoughts? Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you guys were saying that the New York Times should, for transparency purposes, should explain. I'm always of the view that they don't own us anything. You know, this is a business decision, I think. And this is obviously my own personal view. I'm the member of the editorial board in the Boston Globe. I feel like it's a business decision. They don't own us anything. No more than they should explain why all of a sudden they seem to be more of a gaming company than a news company. Seriously, like why should they explain that? Second, I think this is, again, just my view. I think this is just indicative of how the New York Times is viewing itself less a local paper and more of a national, international powerhouse, and also less as a news organization more than sort of a gaming sort of service. All, you know, how they do all this cooking. They have a cooking app, they have audio, and so it's just indicative of that trend, I think. And I get that you lose something, because I love writing endorsements. It's one of my favorite things to do, because otherwise I would not know about all these races. Like you mentioned, we endorsed Mara Dolan in one of the government council races, but the thing is that it's very labor intensive to do that. And you know why? Because I know this is paradoxical, but the more you lose local news coverage, the more you have to do the work yourself. As an editorial board, you have to, you know, for whoever you're going to endorse, you have to do a background, you know, a complete report, a complete investigation into this person, who this person is. Obviously, it's a service to the readers, but if there's no other coverage about this race, about this candidate, you're left wondering, well, we're supposed to do the work ourselves. What about the other work that we have to do. So it's very labor intensive. I don't blame them. I don't think they need to explain why. New Yorkers are going to lose something for sure. The way I see it, it's a business opportunity for local newspapers, honestly.
Well, let me say that I disagree with every word you just said.
Of course you did. I did not expect it any other way.
2 reasons. One, because local news is disappearing, as you know, which is a nightmare, not only in terms of editorials, but as Marjorie says all the time, covering small things that are small to some, huge to others, and when nobody's watching, as you know as well as anybody, when nobody's watching, it basically says do whatever the hell you want. Number 2, I would agree if they add something. They don't owe us an explanation. When you give the reader, particularly a reader who pays, which they do at the New York Times, X, and you choose to take it away, that's part of what I bought with my subscription. When you're taking it away, I think you do owe
But where
somebody.
do you stop? I mean, again, they owe you an explanation as to why they're offering more games, why they're charging X, Y, and Z for the cooking app.
But that's addition. I think addition and subtraction, frankly, are 2 different things. By the way, I should say I love the game section of the Globe, too, just so you know, okay?
We have a game
laughing
section.
nervously,
We have a game.
Marissa.
We have a game section, and honestly, whatever it takes to subsidize the news and to pay
By the way,
news.
it's the first thing I do every single morning.
The
games to calm down. It's honest to God. In the Globe and the New York Times at the beginning of the
You
day.
and everybody else.
I played the decathlon during the. Yeah, I did. I played, and I do the word flower every single day.
Well, thank you for doing that. As it relates to the Globe.
As painful as this is, I have to agree with Jim on most of what he said. This is a rare occasion. Somebody should mark this down. But I do agree. I mean, part of it is. So I'm going to use this metaphor. The New York Times is among the group of papers that are saying, Vice President Harris needs to sit down with us. Why isn't she giving us an interview? They're not her constituency.
Well,
right. But they're the press, and they're the fourth estate and everything that comes with that.
Sure.
But they're not her constituency.
Sure.
She's talking to her constituency.
Sure.
The New York Times has a constituency. Everybody who subscribes is a constituency. Why aren't they equally attendant to answering that constituency on this question? Why can they hide behind it's a business decision?
You asked earlier how many people read endorsements. I can tell you they're not read.
I know.
They are among the things that we write in terms of the editorial board, editorials, endorsements, opinions, the lowest read product. And so it becomes less of a product to justify. Like if you are looking at where am I going to spend my resources, am I going to dedicate 5 editorial writers to investigate or to work or report on all these candidates to produce an endorsement that no one's going to be reading, that is just not a good use of your resources.
Well, let me respond to that too, if I may. We have public officials who are kind enough to come to the show.
Sure.
In most cases, spend an hour answering our questions and yours. This may not shock you. Those are not our highest rated segments.
Sure.
You know why we do them? The same reason you do a lot of things you at your paper. You have an obligation. We have an obligation to our listeners, you at the Globe, and you're continuing to do it.
Well, why don't you guys do endorsements?
Why don't we?
Yeah.
Why don't we? I don't know why, as the answer to the, I don't know.
Well, you don't have an opinion section, you don't have an editorial board, et cetera,
we're
et cetera.
an opinion
But you
show,
could.
though. We're not a
you
straight
are.
news
You
show.
are a talk show, right?
Yeah.
You could do it. I mean, honestly, to me, this is a moment where a lot of media companies are experimenting, innovating, changing. Again, the New York Times is more of a gaming company more than it is a news. I mean, I'm telling you, look at their financials. Like, seriously, people love that stuff, and they subscribe. They may not subscribe because of the news. They may come in to, through the game app. So why not experiment with new forms, with new vehicles to communicate with people and have a talk show radio? Endorse.
Well, let me tell you, I shouldn't tell you inside baseball. The only reason we haven't endorsed, for example, in the presidency is Marjorie can't decide between Trump and Harris.
Don't blame Marjorie.
As soon as
She's not here to defend herself.
That was a joke, Marcella. Okay, Marcella, it's good to see you. By the way, when I said I play the games in the morning to calm down, here's what Jamie, our leader, says. Jim, it's clearly not working, number one. And 2, to calm down from what? The stress of waking up? So that is the respectful response from my colleague, Jamie.
Yeah, those are fair points.
Okay, Marcella, it's nice to see you. Go ahead.
Okay, so among the Trump/Project 2025 policy things they've got that they've decided they're going to implement should he become president, is a promise to deport them all. Which is, a follow-up on his, build the wall, deport them all. He's got to keep things in very short sound bites that he can remember from time to time. There's, at least in my view, not even a remote possibility that he'd even be able to do this. But talk a little bit about what's really behind it and what, if he should try to do it, what that would actually mean for this country and its economy.
Well, obviously, it is a campaign device, right? Just like Build the Wall was. It's funny because not even his supporters believe that he's going to deport them all. They take it as sort of a law and order, harsh enforcement, anti-immigrant policy, measure. They don't actually believe that he's going to deport them all, much like they didn't believe him when he said build the wall. Of course he didn't build the wall. Mexico did not pay for it. He did spend $15 billion of taxpayers' money to build a minimal amount of wall in the border, which only had a huge negative impact on the environment, water resources, cultural sites. And so much like that project, the deport them all policy, if he gets elected, would follow, I think, a similar route. Because first of all, you have to have manpower to round up people. Who's going to be that? It's obviously have to be the military or the National Guard or police. Who's going to do their jobs? They already have a job. Who's going to keep people safe? And even if that's the case, you also don't have the facilities to detain them. Some countries do not take. We don't have, for example, Venezuela, right? Like, what if we were to deport thousands of Venezuelans? Well, we don't have relationships with Venezuela, that we cannot send them back there. You have to keep them detained. Where are those facilities? So practically speaking, is not, like you said, doable. That said, in the process of trying to do it, much like he did with the wall, he would probably inflict a lot of damage, right? Like, he would probably start small, or he would start rounding up, or...
Well, last time kids were in these camps.
That's my point.
Wrenched from their parents.
Exactly. So it would be inhumane, and people would suffer. And again, these are workers, right? Like, undocumented immigrants work here. And what's going to happen to the labor market? What's going to happen to inflation?
Tax revenue.
Exactly.
Because they pay taxes,
Tax
which people
revenue
seem to forget all the time.
So it's completely irrational to believe that that's going to happen. That said, he could still try to do it. And in the process, he would inflict a lot of damage.
Well, can I add one thing to this that you've written about, too? By the way, the reason you may have said this, if you did, my apologies. Jamie was sending me mean texts, and I had to read the text, so I may have missed it. His key donors need these workers. All of the big businesses are dependent upon migrant labor, without which they couldn't provide the services.
Correct.
So in addition to the damage done to fellow human beings, he would do great damage to the economy that he says he's such a genius about. So on every single letter, it's just pandering to the lowest common denominator, as that disgusting meme the other day, which we've talked about ad nauseum, Trump's world, the brick house with the flag, and Kamala, as he'd call her, world in which all people of color are trying to scale a fence to get into this country. So, it's just a totally ridiculous thing. You mentioned Venezuela. Can we talk about this for a second? I am obsessed with this. This is an election where Maduro, who's the dictator essentially, didn't just lose, but was crushed by this Gonzalez, the opposition. Every independent source, including I think it was the Washington Post, that actually looked at some of the data coming out of 80% of the polling sites, says that Gonzalez beat him 2-1. I guess the question is, what can be done? I think Joe Biden misspoke yesterday when he was asked quickly what should happen, because Biden has been among those who said the United States believe Gonzalez has won. We have sanctions against them already. But he yesterday, and again, they corrected it, so I assume it was just a slip, said there should be another vote. And obviously there shouldn't be another vote.
Right,
because
that was...
should be honored that happened. So is he just going to... What's going to happen here?
I just took a very, very cynical view when I wrote that column, that it's just becoming very clear that it's very hard to dislodge him from power. And the reason is, obviously, sanctions, people may think that they work, they don't work. In this case, they haven't worked. He's still there. And there's a lot of people who say, well, we still should have them. we still should, because Biden relaxed some of the sanctions in order for Maduro to agree to these elections, which of course he didn't really, he really didn't do his part of this agreement with the U.S. and the international community to relax some of the sanctions. He agreed to have free elections. This happens, he steals the election, and so the question is now what happens, right? The U.S., what can the U.S. do? I mean, we're not going to invade Venezuela. We're not going to, so I think what's happening, it is the opinion of many experts that the U.S. is working through diplomatic channels to pressure what are seen as Maduro allies like Colombia, Mexico, Brazil, to push him to basically, recognize that, or to just, because Maduro is saying, no, I won, and he has this data, right, that says that he won. He hasn't released his data, so they're pushing him to do that, etc. So, but other than, the thing is that everyone wants Maduro to leave, right? There's no incentive for him to leave right now. There's no incentive, so you have to make it. Somebody was saying, oh, well, maybe we should just send him to an island. Well, he already has islands. He doesn't need another island to live by himself. And so it's becoming clear to me, again, it's a very cynical view that is really hard to just get him out of there or get him to accept. It's sad, right? And so maybe Biden, in his slip, is really acknowledging that what else can we do? Really, what else can we do?
But a new election would do nothing because they'd phony the results of the next election. By the way, Jamie just told me on Tuesday of next week, I hope I pronounced it right, Tibisay Zay, is that how you say that? Zay?
Yeah.
She's a reporter, she is a reporter from GBH's The World who's been reporting in Venezuela. When you talk big picture, it doesn't really convey the pain sort of a la Gaza until you look at people's horror. A good friend of mine has parents there in Venezuela the elderly parents, who've not been out of their house at all except to see a doctor in months and months and months. And when they do need to go to a doctor, she needs to surreptitiously get medical equipment that it's necessary for whatever procedure they need, I don't know if smuggled is the right word, but into the country and to them because there are no medical supplies for average people who have health problems.
And a lot of people actually argue that that's a byproduct of the sanctions, right? When you apply pressure through sanctions, Maduro is not the one suffering. It's his people. And so this is why we've had a huge exodus of Venezuelans lately.
Huge, like a fourth or a fifth of the population.
Right. And so what are you going to do? Increase more sanctions, and that's just going to get worse. So that's why the discourse around sanctions is very controversial. But no, it's absolutely horrible. I hear that all the time. People smuggling medical supplies, life-saving medications. It's just horrible.
We're talking to Marcela Garcia from The Globe, who thinks the New York Times has no responsibility to its readers. Is that a fair?
That's not a fair assessment, Your Honor. That's not what I said.
So, I'm not a huge fan of private equity. I probably learned more about private equity than I ever cared to know when I was in the cannabis industry. It was.
Oh, I bet.
It still is the primary source of revenue. That's investors, private equity investors. But I've also seen what they've done, in that industry and elsewhere. You wrote a piece, and I'm so glad you did, about private equity's impact on veterinary services. Just talk about it. Cover as much about this as you possibly can. I just think this is huge.
Andrea, the industry really is everywhere. And private equity tends to look into industries that are fragmented, small business owners, because they want to realize cost efficiencies. They want to draw profits, right? And so these are the industries that are dental, obviously healthcare. We saw it with Stewart. But veterinary services is an area where they have been going in more and more, to the point that they have raised alarms in the federal government. There is one company that I had never heard in my life before, Germany-based, and they own not only veterinary clinics, but pet insurance company too. So how is that not, a conflict of interest? The Federal Trade Commission already signed a consent agreement with them based on antitrust issues. And now Senator Elizabeth Warren, our crusader senator, and Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut sent a letter to this company, the Germany-based company, just asking them a bunch of questions for transparency and accountability purposes. Where are you located? How many clinics do you have? Where are your profits? How much are you charging for all of these medications that are very common in the veterinary industry? I mean, I take my dog. You have no idea how many readers' responses I got. They were like, why don't you look into this industry? Look into this other one. The dental industry. I got so many emails from people saying you should look into the dental industry and private equity. And, you know, it's hard because I don't want to demonize. And I have friends who work in private equity. And it's hard not to do it. The problem is there's no oversight, there's no regulation.
Right.
They are allowed to basically operate unchecked, and the profits are insane. And so again, I mean, it's not just private equity, it's also corporate America. As I wrote, unbeknownst to me, there's this candy company, Mars, that makes Snickers,
right.
M&Ms. They also own Panera and Krispy Kreme and all these sort of fast food chains. They also own a bunch of clinics that, right. You know, that you have seen probably, Banfield, et cetera. And so I'm not saying that they're necessarily wrong, but when you have, I mean, what happens with you know, when corporate America comes to, you know, this type of industry, usually the costs are transferred to the consumer.
Care is not their primary concern. Profit is their primary concern.
And
that's like, as we've seen with Stewart Healthcare.
Exactly.
Right.
So, I mean, we've seen that movie before, right? And so it's the same thing happening. Like I said, a lot of readers wrote to me saying, you should look into the dental industry. The same thing is happening. So...
And when they go under, they just go under. It's not like someone comes along and picks up the pieces, and those small
right.
mom and pop clinics or smaller veterinary clinics get back up on their feet and resume practice. That doesn't happen.
Right.
So nobody reads endorsements. Everybody reads about
pets.
Private equity and pets.
Anything
you know,
about
one
pets.
piece in your story that not blew. We discussed the other day how much it costs to raise a kid in Massachusetts. Was it $600,000 to age 18? I think it was. Whatever. It's somewhere in that range. Let me read from your piece. The lifetime cost of pet health care can range from $20,000 to $55,000 for a dog and $15,000 to $45,000 for a cat, according to the study, and you cite the source. That is insane. I mean,
I pay pet insurance for my dogs, and one of them actually has a pre-existing condition, which is a whole nother separate subject, but I pay probably more than $200 a month for both of them for pet insurance. And it doesn't really cover a lot. I mean, it doesn't cover preventatives and all that, but this is just if something major happens. But that's not including the regular exams. Like every time, people know this, and anyone who has a pet know that the cost has gotten insane. $200, $300 every time you go to, you know, just a regular visit.
You know, on that a related note, we're going to talk to Cy Montgomery in about 30 minutes. Oh, go ahead, fill in the blank.
But we're going to talk to Cy Montgomery in a while, and one of the things we're going to talk to her about is this sort of idea that we have, you know, you see those Sarah McLachlan music commercials for the MSPCA, right? That abuse is the primary reason that shelters are full. There's a piece with her that we're going to talk about. People have to give up their pets because they can't. So we're going to talk to her about this private equity thing, I'm sure, because the shelters, the vast majority, 2/3, I think, of the pets that are in shelters are there because their owners simply cannot care for them. Sometimes it's because of a natural disaster. They become unhoused or something like that. But sometimes it's vet bills. They literally can't pay the vet bills.
Right. Just like your healthcare bills are also insanely high. Same thing with pets. It's becoming pretty untenable. It's super high.
The question is, how do you stop this from happening?
Regulation. I mean, I'm sorry to say that.
Exactly right.
It really is oversight. And that's why, coming back to the original, or the reason why I wrote this is, you know, I commend Senator Warren for doing this, for looking into this corner of business that private equity is also going into. It's just oversight. I mean, just like a public company. A public company has to fill all these requirements and release information on a regular basis. Same thing with private equity.
You know, by the way, we don't have time for this, but I just want to say, you mentioned you wrote a piece, The Hidden Tax Power of Undocumented Immigrants. And the only reason that, even though we don't have time for it today, we'll do it next time you're here, you mentioned how much in taxes undocumented immigrants contribute to the economy. But the one thing that Trump, once again, misstated the other day, he mentioned Social Security, which makes every worker nervous, including young and old workers, saying they don't pay in and then they get the money. Of course, he got it exactly
wrong.
backwards.
Right.
They pay in, as we learned from you, and they don't get the benefit. So if anything, they're strengthening the damn Social Security system rather than weakening it.
And it's $96.5 billion in taxes they pay every single year.
Yeah.
96.
There's another piece to be written about the Social Security aspect, because you're absolutely right. They are sustaining, they are keeping this program going, basically, Social Security, and they're not getting any benefits. Same thing with unemployment insurance. All these payroll taxes that they, pay into, they're not getting the benefits.
Okay, so Marcel, if people want to subscribe to Mira, how do they do that?
Go to bostonglobe.com/Mira, and you can get it in English or in Spanish.
And we're going to do something special for you because we like you. Ordinarily, we'd say you have to wait till you're here next to apologize for your position on the New York Times. If you text us between now and that time, we'll read your apology on the air. Is that okay?
Definitely, but just make sure you're sitting down to wait for that.
And make sure you're holding your breath until you get it.
Hold your breath and sit down, because,
Marcel, it's great to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Please give Santo and Benito belly rubs for me.
I will.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You. We've been speaking with Marcela Garcia, associate editor and columnist at the Boston Globe. She authors the bilingual Mira column. Up next, the legislature actually passed something, Jim, a maternal health bill. We're going to talk about that with the head of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, Michael Curry, next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL, and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, Vice President Kamala Harris accepts the Democratic nomination for president. Her political rise, fueled by the voting power of the Indian American community, is also ushering more South Asian women into American politics. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, providing resources and tools to help you navigate the college planning process, including customized plans of savings, loans, and guidance. More information at mefa.org. And the Museum of Science with Survival of the Slowest, a new live animal exhibit that demonstrates evolution down the path less traveled. MOS.org.
I'm Nicole Garcia, producer for BPR, and you're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Andrew Cabral in for Marjorie. Marjorie's back Monday. We're live at the library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now live at the library by Michael Curry. He's president and CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, also a member of the National NAACP Board of Directors. He chairs their Advocacy and Policy Committee. Hello, Michael.
Hey, good to see you both.
Good to see you, too.
Hello, Mr. Curry. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
We actually have some breaking news on the Stewart hospitals and Governor Healy taking some action. There have been some questions about, why the Commonwealth hasn't sort of been more proactive about these hospitals. What do you know about it?
Well, one is, and I know the governor probably is in a press conference right now, and the press release has just been put out. So we know that Stewart Healthcare, through greed, the stories around Ralph De La Torre and others, we've talked about it here, left those hospitals underinvested in and, quite frankly, facing closure, if not transition to some other entity. In the state, through the bankruptcy court, of course, has been involved, this out of Texas. We are now at a point now where the state is announcing some plans around some of these hospitals. So we know Kearney is closing, and I was on a call. I testified today at a Boston Health Commission hosted hearing on Kearney Hospital. It is closing. And there's some effort to keep Kearney open, but I think there's not a lot of hope that there will be a turnaround there. We know that St. E's is being taken by eminent domain, which is a call that some of you asked for the state to use that power, that authority. some indication in some of the news I saw on the way over that BMC is interested in then taking over the hospital. Holy Fam would go to Lawrence General, Good Sam would go to BMC, and then St. Anne's and Morton would go to an entity called Lifespan. So this is all shaking out. From a community health center perspective, my concern is, one, making sure that patients have access to care. There's continuity of care. If your hospital's closing or if there's a transition, you should still have access to your doctors in your facilities. That's specialists, that's ambulatory services. And then we fill in the gap as community health centers. So we know that if you are looking for services, whether it be primary care, urgent care, we're an option for that. And the Secretary and I just got off the phone, Secretary Kate Walsh and I just got off the phone about what the role health centers will play in all the transition I just talked about.
What role will they play?
Well, one is many of the health centers, whether it be in Neshoba Valley, which is closing, or Kearney Hospital. If you think about the Kearney example, you got Dot House Community Health Center. You got South Boston just a few miles down the road. You got Harbor Health Services. You got Cobbin Square. So it's health centers that provide services, including urgent care, that should be an option for patients if they're looking for that level of services. We don't do emergency services in that area, but urgent care we do. And then again, the role is, I always say, and I've said it on the show now, pay now or pay greater later. So the whole notion of that is we don't want you in the emergency room. We want you in primary care so that cancer gets caught earlier. We can send you to a specialist. So we treat your asthma, we treat your mental health, your substance use disorder. And unfortunately, we rely on the downstream of treating people in an emergency room, and it's costing us literally to do that.
I have two questions about Stewart, remaining questions for you. Community meetings around the Neshoba Valley closing and the Kearney closing, many of the speakers have blamed the governor for not doing enough. When we had the governor on several weeks ago, we asked her about doing more, and I believe her response was, what we're fighting for is to keep those two hospitals open 120 days rather than the August 31st closing, which the bankruptcy court has granted. Are you of the belief that the governor could be doing more than she's doing on those two?
So I'm always conflicted on stuff like this because I think advocates should activate, right? And they should advocate and call for things that may not be visible, right? May not be visible in our conversation now, but the possibility, right? Eminent domain of a Kearney. I know that there's complexity behind this that the average person, the public won't see. It's building related, right? The very dilapidated building, Stan McLaren is a good friend of mine, former health center leader, who's the head of Kearney Hospital, not Stewart Healthcare, but the hospital itself. The facilities are in disrepair. So there's issues there. I think the reality is this, is that I trust the governor and I trust the secretary to do what's necessary to preserve access to care for those patients. And I do know one of the things the public won't see, but they do this with health centers when we're in financial crisis like this, or COVID during the pandemic, is they allowed some drawdown in payments in some ways. And I know that one of the reasons they're still able to make payment to the staff is because of direct efforts of the governor and the secretary.
Second question, last question for me on Stewart is, I mentioned this, I think, earlier today. Senator Warren was on the show with Marjorie, and Shirley Young was sitting in for me from the Globe last week. And she said that it was I'm paraphrasing, it was outrageous that De La Torre, who has raided this company for his personal benefit, millions of dollars. Brian McGrory wrote brilliantly about the yachts and the planes and the whatever. He's still in charge. The guy who helped sink this operation is still in charge. Why is the bankruptcy court not removing him and putting a receiver in place? You're a pretty good lawyer. You're a pretty good lawyer. I'm not. I'm serious. Why is the state, for example, not, I don't know what their legal status is, intervening and saying the bankruptcy court should appoint you or somebody? I'm serious. Somebody other than De La Torre.
I'll jokingly say this. Some fear of making a comment about him because then I'll have somebody in shades in a suit following me around the city.
Go for it, Michael.
Because they actually were paying for people to be watched.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's part of the stories is that the kind of business practices.
Oh, right. I did read,
that they had.
Yeah.
That being said, I think the reality is we have a dilemma in Massachusetts, which is, and what we talked about this before, for-profit entities coming in the state. It may be for-profit in housing, for-profit in other sectors makes perfect sense, and we got to manage that sort of capitalism. But then when it comes to healthcare, do you want the hospital, the provider is treating you to have your health as their primary objective, their mission? or their profit.
We just said that with Marcella.
Cheryl,
We literally just said that.
And the reality is Massachusetts, our sort of values has been not-for-profit health plans, not-for-profit hospitals. So now Ralph and his Stewart organization came in. They bought up these properties, these hospitals. And then when they decided there were no value in them as they grew their business across the country, they defunded them, right? They sold the property, moved their investments, and then they left us with a shell of hospital systems or hospitals. And now we're reeling. Legislature, Mariano, Spilka, the governor, and the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, are all trying to figure out what our authority is to hold him and them accountable, but it's for profit. So again, that's the rub. When it's business and it's for profit in our capitalistic system, it may not allow us the regulatory interventions to hold people accountable. But the challenge is on all those folks that I just named to figure out what we do going forward.
Well, I don't know anything about bankruptcy law, but I think I know enough to say a bankruptcy judge has the power to replace the leadership of a for-profit company and replace it with a receiver of the judge's choosing. And I think Warren's point is so obvious. I'm embarrassed I hadn't thought about it, but essentially the guy who raided the damn system is still making the decisions.
And what we also know about courts is it's a Texas court. It's bankruptcy is in Texas, so it's not Massachusetts.
Right.
And if you've seen one court, you've seen one court, right? So how much they exercise their authority really depends on the trier of fact in those cases.
We're talking to Michael Curry.
So my question on this is about sufficient infrastructure. And, I'm thanking every lucky star that there is a network of these community health centers that can sort of fill in. But are there gaps in that infrastructure to fill in? You mentioned, a lack of emergency room care. And to the extent that there are gaps, what is government or what can government intervention do to help fill those?
Again, it's almost like we're in a crisis, and I know you've heard me say this before, right? We were in a migrant crisis. We're in a COVID crisis. We
just lurch from crisis to crisis.
It's just perpetual crisis. But the reality is it's a crisis. No matter who your listener is, if you get sick right now and go to an emergency room, you will be waiting hours, almost at any hospital, no matter what your condition is, unless it's that significant that they need to see you right away. But all of us have personal stories of sitting in an emergency room for a ridiculous amount of hours. And understand that waiting means impacts on your health, because that longer you sit there means the condition's getting worse. Our health centers are also inundated with people trying to come back to care from COVID, and then we're under-resourced entities. So we want to expand and provide more services, but we need investment to do that. We need commercial health plans to pay us equitable rates. I didn't say Medicaid, because they readjusted their rates. But for commercial that don't pay us well, then we can't expand our buildings, our services, and then you could wait anywhere from 90 days as a new patient to 40 days as an existing patient just to be seen, even at a community health center, on average. So the reality is our system can't see you. And that means it's going to be longer for your Crohn's disease, for your cancer diagnosis, for your asthma, whatever it is. That should terrify everybody in Massachusetts and, quite frankly, across the country. But the reality is we're becoming weathered to these access issues. Access issues lead to quality issues, lead to bad outcomes, and they, quite frankly, contribute to disparities. So Black women with maternal health crises, Black and brown men that are dealing with high rates of prostate cancer, name it. All of that's going to be exacerbated in the next several years because our system is not prepared, aside from Stewart, our system is not prepared to see people timely with quality and diversity, because the data shows if you have Black doctors, you have doctors who speak your language, you get better care, if not for anything else but lived experience.
Can we spend, we've never done this with you, we're going to spend the rest of the segment actually talking about good news. And let's start with one when you're speaking about healthcare providers who don't look like the people they're serving. What the consequence is I'm embarrassed to say, I didn't know till this morning that Bloomberg, Mike Bloomberg, Medford kid, we had the head of the Science Museum here talking about the huge contribution he made there because he loved it as a kid. He recently made a $600 million contribution to HBCU medical schools. It seems to me the impact can be nothing but good.
Transformational. So you've heard me, and we talked about my Quantum Leap presentation, a walk through history that I do around anti-Black racism in this country from 1619 to today. One of the pieces I do in there is the Flexner Report, 1910, that basically defunded and closed black medical schools across this country. So if we understand it, and I've said it before, talent
because of the
lies...
standard. Just tell people because
standard.
they used a European standard.
And he was racist, right? So he didn't believe black doctors should treat white patients. He didn't think that we were intelligent enough to even serve as doctors. And quite frankly, some of his report that black institutions did not have the infrastructure and resources was because of racism.
Right.
They didn't have the resources. So it shrunk a pool of black facilities across this country and Latino facilities. It shrunk their ability to get more entrants, matriculants, and graduates to then go out and serve in their communities.
30,000 to 50,000.
30,000, 50,000. And then it relegated it down to the few we have today: Meharry, Howard University, Morehouse, University of Puerto Rico, Drew. So that means that less black talented doctors and lawyers are available to be cardiologists and name the other professions that we need in the community serving. That was intentional. And I think we sometimes think we tripped into these circumstances that black folks didn't study hard enough, or they didn't want to go to be a resident, they didn't want to be a brain surgeon. And when in fact, it was most of this country's history to steer us, to prevent us from being in those professions. And quite frankly, what Bloomberg did is transformational. He's invested $16 million to build $600 million to build up the infrastructure of those institutions, to create a pipeline of new entrants that maybe it offsets some of the debt that they come in, because that'll prevent you from joining and going into a medical education. He's to be credited for that. It's money. Money matters. And if you invest it in places where there's been a historic inequity, you can change generations.
Talking to Michael Curry, head of the League of Community Health Centers in Massachusetts.
Okay, so we just finished talking about the ways in which these disparities sort of occur. There's we have a whole slew of different stories around the way that this anti-DEI movement is moving into the healthcare space. You know, as much as I'm bothered by the impact of this, and it's just regression back to an incredibly racist time. You can call it anti-DEI, you can give it any modern name you want. It merely is a regression back to a time when white heterosexual males were supreme. What they wanted in this country was supreme. That's just a fact. That's what Project 2025 is about. That's what this DEI stuff is about. Bothered as I am and continue to be about its infiltration into the education space, where they're using the Supreme Court decision to now go in and try to eliminate any DEI program, its movement into the medical space strikes me as, particularly is too small a word for it, almost immeasurably more cruel.
Yeah.
Talk to this audience about what is actually happening and what they're actually trying to prevent in terms of people's care.
Well, I think it's interesting. So we are sitting here right now, and this year is the 60th anniversary of the Medical Committee for Human Rights. So for folks who don't know what that organization was, it was medical activists who launched health centers in the 1960s. But in 1964, they launched the Medical Committee for Human Rights. That was Dr. Smith out of Mississippi. That was Jack Geiger, Count Gibson here in Massachusetts at Tufts. And they were the ones who hosted Dr. King just about 2 years later in Chicago, where he said of all the forms of inequality, injustice in health is the most shocking and inhumane. Actually, he didn't even say what I just told you he said. That's the quote all of us know. He said of all the forms of inequality, injustice in health is the most shocking. Injustice in health, not health care, is the most shocking, and inhuman, not inhumane, right? So I don't even recognize your human dignity. So right now, we know that this is chess, not checkers. This is really war. While they distract us to look at Senator Wilkerson or the squad or, the crazies on the left, you're ignoring the crazies on the right, right?
Right.
The crazies on the right want to defund through Project 2025 everything, dismantle all the progress we've made in history, and the Heritage Foundation has developed a roadmap to do it. That roadmap includes healthcare. How do we now dismantle the opportunities to provide equal access to services? How do we make healthcare more affordable? I don't know if people say this. I was sitting in a barbershop one day, we were talking among black men about healthcare, and somebody was kind of caught up in the moment, if you remember the McCain stuff about death panels and Affordable Care Act. And one of the young black men said, yo, this is all, socialized medicine. He basically was parroting back something he probably saw on Fox. I said to him, you know that before the Affordable Care Act, there were over 40 million people without health insurance. What did that mean? That meant that if you were in need of care and you had to go to care, you chose not to because you couldn't afford it. So you didn't go to get care until it was an emergency. That meant you were more likely to be sick longer, not be able to live a healthy life, and it meant you were more likely to die. And guess what? Many of them were black and brown, who were screened off from that health care. And now
poor.
Poor. Now I think we're down to under 20 million, so we still have a challenge, but the Affordable Care Act was the vehicle to do that. So we got to change this anti-DEI, anti-health justice, anti-equity movement. They're trying to reframe it, create negativities around these words.
And they're well-funded, and they're using the courts to do it.
Absolutely. And healthcare is one of the fronts of that battle. Again, if you want to sleep through this, you'll turn around 10, 15 years from now, and a lot of the progress we've made will be turned, and you will not have paid attention. You didn't vote. You didn't go to the hearings. You didn't write. You didn't show up. Shame on you. Shame on us if that happens.
Can you just name the two? I just wanted to name the two places. Do No Harm is one of the organizations, and the other is the Wisconsin Center for something and Liberty. Liberty is always part of it when they're actually trying to do the exact opposite. But people need to know who these organizations are because they're well-funded and they are attacking all of these outlets for providing care, some of whom are settling with them to avoid a lawsuit and having to pay damages if they run afoul or run into a court with a judge who thinks, yes, absolutely, you have to stop providing this level of care.
Gender-affirming care, all that's on the table right now because they're attacking all of it.
Yes, very much anti-LGBT, very much anti-gender-affirming care, no
women's right to choose.
Everything. Everything.
And
Reproductive
I'll tell you,
freedom,
this might shock people. I get Heritage Foundation text messages and emails. And you say, why would you get a Heritage Foundation? I get it because I want to know what they're saying, what they're talking about. You need to know that too.
Okay, so we violated my commitment to only do positive. We're not going to have time today to get to what Biden and Harris announced yesterday is that first 10 drugs where prices will be dropped to the tune of $6 billion of savings, Medicare drugs. We'll talk about it on Monday or Tuesday next week. But since Marjorie and I spend so much time trashing the Massachusetts legislature, they actually did something really important, particularly for the constituencies you've been talking about for the last couple of minutes. Tell us a little bit about this maternal health bill that passed in informal session.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people to give credit to, of course, the House, the Senate, and leadership on both sides. My good friend, mentee, who I've known since she was a Wellesley College student, Liz Miranda, Senator Liz Miranda, who used to sneak in a club I used to do back in the day. Don't tell anybody that. She was underage too, but neither one of us can get in trouble by it now. Spoken word spot. But Liz Miranda, Rep. Marjorie Decker, and so many others that were sponsors and co-sponsors of the bill. We know that midwives have a role to play in providing care. We know we over-hospitalize women's health and particularly pregnancy. That in most of this country's history, women got their care at home. And there were midwives and now doulas and others that could provide care in safe environments where you're comfortable, where people believe you, they know you, they respect you. There's no inherent racism in the institutions, and people got that care at home. In all races, by the way.
Or misogyny.
Misogyny. And now, this is a recognition of the role midwives play to get women, generally. And I'm excited about the women of color that I know who need access to these midwives, get them certification, get them training, and get them legitimized within our healthcare system so that we can bring down these rates that show, particularly for me, that black babies are 2 or 3 times more likely to die, and that black mothers are 2 or 3 more times likely to have adverse outcomes or die in pregnancy. That was never acceptable, and I think I'm excited that there's some champions on the Beacon Hill, like Liz and Rep. Decker and others that I will leave out if I try to name everybody, that are really fighting for women and fighting for black women to this day.
And one last thing, it's obvious, but let me say it explicitly. The mortality rates you were decrying a minute ago changed dramatically. Evidence shows when there are midwives and doulas available and affordable. Is that not correct?
Yeah, it does. And the data has been coming out for the last 2-3 years about black doctors and communities, brings down some of these disparities, or black women and their babies survive. I think there's some simple to it. One is, if I speak your language, if I understand your culture, if I believe you, because that's really the issue in healthcare, is people say, I don't believe that you have pain, Or, you're saying that to me, but I'm going to send you home anyway, though you're telling me you're in pain. And then you come back with complications and you or your baby die. This is a black woman to a black woman who says, no, I actually believe you. I'm going to send you for 2 more tests. Or I want to keep you here overnight. We've lacked that awareness and that connection in healthcare. And I don't think that's a slight to a white doctor or a white male or female doctor, because maybe a woman and a woman, or a Spanish-speaking and a Spanish-speaking person. But we've relegated all that talent, all that access to predominantly white men. And now we're realizing that we did ourselves a disservice by doing that. Let's open up the gates and let in the diversity into the healthcare field.
Michael Curry, it's great to see you as always.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Always
Michael
a pleasure,
Curry.
Michael.
Same here.
We've been speaking with Michael Curry. He's president and CEO of the Massachusetts League of Community Health Centers. He's also a member of the National NAACP Board of Directors, where he chairs the board's Advocacy and Policy Committee. Up next, it's the Afternoon Zoo with Cy Montgomery. Can fruit bats astral project? I love this story. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
A proposed lithium mine in Serbia is spurring protests over its potential impact on the environment.
We are saying no to corporate powers that are going to extract our country and leave trash that's going to poison future generations.
But the mineral is in high demand because it is crucial for the batteries that run electric vehicles. More on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds from medical bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Revision Energy. Sunbug Solar is now part of Revision Energy, a solar installer committed to being a renewable energy partner for New England and working to fight climate change. Learn more at sunbugsolar.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Andrew Cabral sitting in for Marjorie. Marjorie's back on Monday. We're live from the library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now on Zoom by naturalist and author Cy Montgomery. Her latest book is Secrets of the Octopus, in partnership with Nat Geo. Cy, as always, great to see you. Hi.
Oh, I think we can't. Are we having trouble with the audio?
Can you hear me okay?
Hi, now you're there. It's great to see you, Cy.
Okay. Now
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's good to see you, Cy.
I'm glad to be here.
I love your segments because they are, about all things other than human species, mostly animal.
They're my people.
We're going to start out with, absolutely, mine too. We're going to start out with this pilot program that's going on in Jamaica Plain to control the rat population. As I'm sure most people know, there are complaints about the explosion in rat population everywhere. Boston is, sort of acutely affected by it. This is the use of a rat birth control program, and I have to say, I'm all for this. I'm not sure why there's any sort of hesitancy to go forward with this, but explain to people exactly what this entails.
Well, happily, it does not involve handing out little tiny condoms. This is actually really easy to, well, it's not super easy, but what they're doing is they're putting out bait that does not contain poison, but contains instead a contraceptive that works on both male and female rats. In the female rats, what the contraceptive does is it basically brings on menopause. And for the male rats, it decreases their sperm count. And this program has been used in other places. They're trying it out in New York. Ferndale, Michigan is trying it out. The company that makes this product called Contrapest, which is the birth control, one of the birth control drugs, says that it can reduce rodent populations by 95%, which killing them doesn't do.
Right.
And right now, what folks are doing, this organization called Wisdom Good Works, a wonderful name. They are a nonprofit. They're working in Jamaica Plain, and they're putting out in 31 pilot households little birth control pellets in boxes near places like dumpsters. and they've got cameras on them, like game cameras, so that they see how many rats are coming to enjoy the delicious pellets. And they have found that fewer rats are coming. And after just a couple of years, rats in the wild only live about 2 years. In captivity, they don't live much longer than that either. But they can have lots of babies in that time. And they've already seen a really good reduction of 40 to 60% in both consumption of the pellets and population size. They're measuring exactly how much of the pellets are being eaten, and with the game cameras, they're seeing how many animals come. So it seems to be working, and I think it's a great idea. It's so much more humane than pretty much anything else, and some of the ways in which we kill rats are absolutely miserable and toxic and dangerous, and they're dangerous to children. That in New York, remember that owl, the Eurasian owl?
Blanco.
Blanco.
Yeah. Oh, Flacco.
Everyone
That's right.
loves it.
Flacco.
Yeah, he was this big, big owl. I've seen them in the wild. They are really something. And everyone loved this owl. And then he turned up dead this very spring. And the reason was rat poison.
That's horrible.
Right.
So
By the way, they tried, just to correct one thing you said, Si, they tried the mini condoms, but they couldn't get anybody to put them on. So they they had to give up the
But why wouldn't the city of Boston jump on something like this? Why wouldn't any city?
With you.
I mean, they sort of said we want to look at the data and sort of gather the data. Well, that doesn't stop you from partnering with a nonprofit like this one. I mean, I don't know why the reluctance when you know that the thing you have been doing isn't working.
Well, they are trying, instead of using rat poison, what they're trying to do is a lot more humane. They're still killing rats, but what they're doing is they're pumping carbon monoxide into their burrows, which kills them painlessly. But then you've got like rotting rats in holes, which having experienced this ourselves, if you have a barn, you've probably had rats at some point. It's not a great thing. I mean, what they're doing right now in the what's it called? The Boston Rodent Action Plan.
Yeah, we have a rat czar.
Right. It's wisely focusing on trash disposal because there wouldn't be streams of rats if people could just dispose of their trash properly. So they are focusing on that, and that's really smart. And for killing them, they're choosing a method that isn't as horrible as glue traps, for example, which are horrible. We had wonderful tenants for many, many years, and but one set of tenants somehow left a glue trap. I didn't know they were using them. And we heard stuff knocking around, and we found this poor little mouse stuck on the glue trap, and I worked on the glue trap for like half an hour trying to free him from the thing. And I did manage to free him from the thing, but his foot was all hurt. And it's a dreadful way to die.
Yeah, they're terrible.
So at least they're not doing that. And I think it would be great for them to incorporate the birth control. It's so much smarter. As you know, with a lot of animals, just trying to kill them all, it never works. And sometimes they end up just having more litters or larger litters in response to that kind of pressure. But that won't happen with birth control.
And it reinforces the notion that we should just kill things that are in our way or we find annoying or inconvenient.
Talking to Si Montgomery.
So there's this piece in the LA Times written by Carol Mithers. And I just think it's a great piece. She talks about what the typical animal rescue narrative leaves out. And we were actually talking about this with Marcela Garcia. We're all accustomed to the animal rescue commercials and the Sarah McLachlan song and the Arms of the Angels. I literally have to mute them. I mean, I give money all the time, but I literally can't stand to see animals suffer, so I can't watch the commercials, can't listen to the music. The music is actually triggering for me. But this opinion piece makes the case that the vast majority of animals, even though people are cruel to pets and to animals generally, the vast majority of animals that are relinquished to shelter or abandoned, it happens because the person simply cannot afford to take care of the animal. It's not that they don't want to, they can't afford to. And when we talked to Marcella, we were talking about it in terms of sky-high veterinary bills because private equity is slowly, making these incursions into veterinary medicine and charging people exorbitant amounts of money. But talk a little bit about what this seemingly more accurate narrative means for the future of pets in shelter and how they end up there.
Yeah, it actually, it broke my heart, but at the same time healed it a little bit.
Yeah.
Learn that many of the animals in shelters, the majority of the animals in shelters, aren't there because their people didn't want them. They're there because their people felt they couldn't keep them. So it's not like the person that, leaves their child in a dumpster. It's more like the person that puts their child on the church steps in a little basket. They want to stay together. And wouldn't it be better if you allowed these human and animal families to stay together?
Right.
And that's even better than adopting out animals to richer families, because not all of them even get adopted out to richer families. And that a wanted and loved animal could be killed while its family really wants the animal back. That's really heartbreaking. So I thought this was a really important opinion piece.
And how is that happening? How are they keeping these pets and their owners together?
Well, she was writing about this organization, a nonprofit called Downtown Dog Rescue. And what it's done is provide for people things like microchips and flea treatments and handing out collars and leashes and paying to have dogs and cats spayed and neutered and paying even to redeem dogs and cats from shelters. Frequently, even if you go back to get your dog out of the shelter, your cat out of the shelter charges something to retrieve the animal because they've spent money to do that. And sometimes the people can't pay for it. So this organization meets the people experiencing poverty where they live and finds dogs and cats who are like living on the streets with people. Or they also reach out to people who might be unhoused because their apartment all of a sudden won't allow dogs or cats. And I think that is a stroke of genius. That is really, really good. Now, I know that here, our own Angel Hospital at MSP,
Angel Memorial, yep.
Yeah, they do have programs to help you pay for veterinary care. That's terrific. But a lot of times folks they don't know about it. They don't know how to find out about it. And if they don't have a computer, maybe because they're living on the street, how would they find out about it? So the brilliance of this is let's go find them. And that's good for the people and the animals.
Talking to Cy Montgomery. Cy, there's a piece in the New York Times, the title of which is "A Dystopian Effort is Underway in the Pacific Northwest to Pick Ecological Winners and Losers." It's about barn owls being killed in huge numbers to save the northern spotted owl. And it's actually a really fascinating ethical debate about picking, as it says in the headline, winners and losers. Describe the facts if you can, and then tell us where you come out on this.
Yeah, well, what a story. The headline actually called it a dystopian effort, which I totally agree. This is like psycho. The truth is that soon our U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service may kill 500,000 barred owls in the Pacific Northwest. And the reason is that they seem to be outcompeting the critically endangered northern spotted owl. And folks will remember the northern spotted owl was the subject of a lot of controversy a few years ago, because the reason that they are endangered is because all the old growth forests are being cut down. And
to make space for humans.
Yeah, right. And to make money for the logging companies,
right,
too. So like in the 80s, the spotted owls were like the center of this big controversy. And logging was somewhat limited as a result of them being listed as critically endangered, but not banned and not entirely stopped, but the numbers of the spotted owls are still declining. They're not declining as rapidly as they were, but they are still in decline. So this is crazy because it's pitting one owl against another, and they're doing it under the Endangered Species Act. And the Endangered Species Act appears to be the only legal tool that folks have to protect the forests by saying, oh, but there's spotted owls here. If there's spotted owls there, and you find that these other owls are out competing them, well, then instead of telling the loggers, guess what, you just can't cut down anything here, why don't you just kill a bunch of these other owls? The funny thing is that they're considering the barred owls as invasive species. Now, we have barred owls here. They're the owl you're most likely to hear in New England. They're the ones that, like in February when they're mating, they're all saying, who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? You probably heard that. So, but there's now evidence that they're not an invasive species, that they didn't just suddenly move in over there, that they were there all along. But it also calls into question this whole idea of like, what is an invasive species? And even if you are an invasive species, does that make you necessarily a bad thing? And I've found that scientists are now re-examining a lot of invasive species that we thought were the bad guys. And in some cases, they're invading because the habitat has changed due to stuff like global climate change, which is going to continue. And you got to have something move into that niche. So
but Cy, I think people are nodding their heads in the audience here, and I think Andrea and I are too. So short of stopping the logging, which I'm fine with, but I assume it's not going to happen, what do you do? I mean, you do have to pick winners and losers, even if the method for selection here is screwed up. I mean, if one's going to destroy the other, you got to decide to protect one, don't you, or do you?
Well, these folks are arguing that maybe, the spotted owls might even be mating with the barred owls, and that this might be just what nature is doing to try to persist in a dynamically changing, dramatically changing world. And we've seen other examples of ecosystem changing with exotic or invasive species moving in to take the place of some other endangered thing that's on its way out. There's endangered butterflies that now rely on non-native flowers in Vancouver because the native flowers that they used to mostly nectar on are gone. So they aren't gone because the non-native flowers push them out. Saltwater cordgrass, which is an invasive species in California, it was introduced in the 1970s. It is now absolutely crucial to these endangered birds known as the California Ridgeway rail. And they use this to take cover, and they use it to build their nests, and thank God it's even there. Even though people were trying to eradicate this foreign grass. They found out when they tried to eradicate the foreign grass that all these endangered birds were disappearing. So sometimes a so-called invasive species is not necessarily a bad species. Ethically, and it's so interesting when you get philosophers, this was written by 2 Oregon philosophers, and philosophy really interests me a great deal because they are looking at what is the greater good, what is really morally right. And it may not be the greater good to kill 470,000 of one kind of owl to preserve another kind of owl who is on its way out from a human behavior that could be stopped. Maybe what we really need is another successful legal tool to protect the spotted owl other than the Endangered Species Act. And that's what they are arguing.
We should make you the owl czar, I think, is what we should be doing.
Absolutely.
To fix this situation. We're talking to Cy Montgomery. So, Cy, every single time we talk to you, every time there is a new species that exhibits human-like behavior, whether it's cognitive, whether it's memory, whether it's whatever, and which really is jarring to me, at least, thrilling and jarring at the same time. This week it's the fruit bat. What does the fruit bat have that at least most of us didn't know it did?
Well, I knew they did.
Of course you did.
They can do mental time travel. They possess what's known as episodic memory, which is they remember what they did, when they did it, and where they did it. And to me, this is like such a duh.
Right.
But the big news is, the thing I'm excited about is that scientists figured out a way to prove it. But, if you know what fruit bats do, and these are beautiful Egyptian fruit bats. If you look at them, they're like sky pups. They're adorable. Sometimes because they're upside down, it's disturbing. But you turn them right side up, and they're just adorable. They're like little flying chihuahuas. Anyway, so they.
By the way, before you continue, I just want to say I just got a note from one of our colleagues who is very close to you. This is Zoe, who says, "I can't even do that most days. Remember what I did, where I did it, and when I did it." So I'm with her. But continue, Cy Montgomery.
Well, these fruit bats, they go out at night and they find what's fruiting and they eat it, and then they go back to their roost. Well, the thing with fruit, as you know, if you have any fruit trees, they're not fruiting year round. And not every tree is, even of the same species, is fruiting at the same time. So it would behoove you to remember, like, this fruit is available from first week of May to the first week of June. And next, they're not available. Something else is available, but you have to go over there to get that. It's really important for animals to remember this kind of stuff. And otherwise, they would totally be extinct. I mean, to me, the mental feat that I want to showcase is that biologists managed to figure out that this is actually happening, and to prove it. And what they did was they followed these bats. They put like little transmitters on them. They found out where they did, where they went. They would visit different trees, which were more likely to be bearing fruit at different times. So they were keeping in their mind both a map and a calendar.
That's incredible.
And a clock.
But the part that's sort of really fascinating is that there was a difference in the behavior between the younger bats, the teenage bats, and the older ones that they actually were able to prove was attributable to life experience, learning as you go.
I love that. And this is why we need our elders, no matter what species you are. This is why it's an elderly matriarch who leads the elephant herds, because she remembers, even though the last drought this bad was 50 years ago, she remembers when that happened, and she remembers where they go. And there's a lot of other older animals that keep the knowledge that everyone else depends on. Yeah, I loved that. I noticed that too, that the teenagers were just like, oh, I'm just going to fly around and see what we've got.
Can I tell you something? Looking at your eyes for the last 20 minutes on the screen here, if human beings cared as much about human beings as you care about non-human animals, we would really be all fixed up, don't you think? I mean, you are just amazing. Cy, it's wonderful to talk to you as always. We love talking to you.
Thank you, Cy.
She is really...
She is. She's great. She's fantastic.
Fabulous.
We've been speaking
Thanks,
with
Cy.
naturalist and author Cy Montgomery. Her latest book is Secrets of the Octopus. Up next, we'll open the lines about summer jobs. Are you, like Vice President Kamala Harris, among the 1 in 8 Americans who's worked at McDonald's? What summer job did you have or did your kids have? And did that job make a difference later on in life? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL and streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, Banksy gives new meaning to guerrilla art by stenciling a gorilla, the final mural in what has been a 9-day spree of graffiti animals across London. And no doubt Celine Dion's heart will go on, but what about Donald Trump's use of her song? She's the latest musician to condemn a politician for using music at campaign rallies without permission. That and more on The Culture Show's Week in Review, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And M&M Skylights, installing and servicing a wide range of commercial and residential Velux skylight products. You can find more information about their installation process and schedule a consultation at mmskylights.com. And Furniture Consignment Gallery, curating pre-owned luxury home furnishings for over 30 years. Current inventory is available to view in their showrooms in Burlington, Natick, Hanover, and Plymouth. More at furnitureconsignment.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Andrea Carell sitting in for Marjorie. Marjorie's back Monday. We're live at the library, streaming online at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to end the show talking about summer jobs, early career jobs that helped you get through college or whatever it was, or helped fund your, thirsty Thursdays during college. Are you among the 1 in 8 Americans? This is amazing. 1 in 8 Americans who've worked at McDonald's, mastering the fry-o-lator like Vice President Kamala Harris did while at Howard University. And what do those odd jobs mean to you? From the deli counter at Market Basket to landscaping. My first job was painting a building. Should everyone have the experience of working at least one summer in a job that was absolutely nothing to do with what you want to do for the rest of your life? Or has anyone worked that job and then decided that is what they want to do for the rest of their lives? So we went over badly in terms of time, so we're tight. So if you're interested in participating in this, we hope you are. The number is 877-301-8970. What's your summer job history there, Andrea Cabral?
It is scant. I didn't have that many summer jobs, at least not before I went to college. But the first, I think, job I had at 16 was I worked for 2 weeks at the Catamore Jewelry Factory in Rhode Island. Rhode Island is known as like the jewelry capital of the United States. Yeah. And I only lasted 2 weeks. I just couldn't do it. You were literally soldering tiny pieces of metal, onto the backs of earrings. I mean, that's what happens in a jewelry factory. At least that's what happened back then. And I remember just going home after the end of 2 weeks and walking in and saying to my mother, there's just no way. I can't do it.
And what did your mother say to you?
She said it was okay. She didn't mind. I'd done it for 2 weeks. She understood why I couldn't focus on it. I just couldn't do it. And then in a subsequent summer, I don't think it was that summer. It might have been another summer. I had worked at Fisheries and Wildlife, which was like a state job.
Doing
It was like
what?
Rhode Island. The state of Rhode Island used to have. It was mostly, basically, kids who were interns, but got a stipend. That was it. But those are the only 2 summer jobs I ever had.
Well, I did. I painted this building in New Jersey, a little small building with a friend when I was like 15 or something. And then, as I think some listeners know, I worked as a busboy and a waiter in the Catskills at Grossinger's for 4 summers. And I don't know if you know, I didn't become a busboy or a server in my adult life. But,
You were dirty dancing, I assume?
I tried. Let's put it that way. I did, at least part of that. It did teach you a serious level of responsibility, having to get up and do your thing, relate to other people, customers, and coworkers. So I would say, well, it didn't lead me in a direct line path to what I ended up doing. I would have to say it was a pretty important part of my life. Plus, I made a huge amount of money for a kid anyway, as a busboy and a server. And that was, it showed you the value of it. And if you work hard, you can get it and whatever. So that was pretty important to me. In any case, what are your summer job stories and how valuable have they been to you or not valuable? Our number is 877-301-8097. Did your parents mind that you weren't doing serious summer work?
No, they really didn't. I do.
So what the hell are you doing?
I remember I was in junior achievement and we did stuff during the, where you build a company. You literally start a company in junior achievement. It was during the school year, but I also did it during the summer. I basically I think I played a lot of tennis. I hung out with my friends. They were pretty good. My parents were pretty good about not actually forcing me to work. So I look back on it and I think I'm pretty lucky. But I also realize I missed the experience that, a lot of my adult friends still talk about their experiences, all my Dorchester friends worked at Star Market, okay, with all of their friends, or they worked at Brigham's, or they worked, in Rhode Island, it would be Newport Creamery. And that was an experience that I didn't get, so I probably did miss out on something.
Let's go to Ellen in Taunton. You were first on Boston Public Radio. Summer Jobs. Hi.
Hi, Ellen.
Hi, love your show.
Thanks.
Second time caller, first time wasn't good. But so I was.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was a little political.
You'll make up for it now. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I rode horses as a very young kid in Virginia. That's where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And I also swam. So my two first jobs were teaching horseback riding, because I looked older. At 15, I was teaching horseback riding to kids and then adults. And then I was a lifeguard. I did both because I swam competitively and I rode horses. And then my career was horses for the first 40 years of my life. So I trained and showed and taught horseback riding. But it was a great first job. I got $10 an hour in 1975.
That's good.
Wow, that is good.
Yeah.
She paid well, and because you worked hard. But it was a great job. I learned so much. I got to work with Olympic champions and Tab Hunter, the actor who was a horseman. Yeah, he came and kept a horse at our barn. So at 15, I was, he always left stuff, so I was always picking up the stuff and giving it back to him.
Wait a second. Was he was like a boyish-looking actor? What was he exactly? An actor?
He was
pretty
blonde.
boy?
He was in...
It's like a matinee idol.
Yes, he was in Damn Yankees, I think he was famous for.
Oh, okay.
He was handsome.
Okay.
He was in some westerns and stuff, but he was blonde, blue-eyed, but quite gay. So he always had handsome boyfriends he brought with him.
Good for him.
So we're goggling over all these, and they're like, but they're gay, so no. But yes, he was tough. He was best friends with the Olympic champion George Morris, who was like our idol in hunter seat. So we did what they called in the Olympics show jumping. So it's hunter seat. They take the hunter off the field and fancy him up a bit. And so that was what I grew up with, and because I love to jump. I started Western at 4 years old, and that horn was in the way. I couldn't jump. So I got to work with amazing people, and that was my career at first.
Listen.
But I also
Go
had
ahead.
swimming and lifeguarding. So those were the two jobs. But the horseback riding, obviously, was the thing I did the most.
Let me tell you, I don't remember your first call, but if it was as bad as you say, you excelled the second time. So I can't wait for the third. Ellen, thank you.
But it's
very
amazing.
much.
People remember
Did you hear the joy in her
summer
voice?
job. Yeah, and they remember them fondly. I mean, there's definite nostalgia there. Lucy from Worcester said she put herself through college working at Target. That and her GPA launched her into her now 25-year career in supply chain logistics.
Oh.
Denise in Waltham
So
said, I
moving.
scooped ice cream, I worked at a pharmacy, I waited tables, I worked in retail. My kids are lifeguards, so learning real responsibility and also having to deal with disgruntled customers. She thinks every high school and college kid should work a grunt job at some point in their lives so they understand the value of money and gain respect for people working those jobs when they don't have to work them anymore.
By the way, I said some of the things that I learned from doing 4 years in the Catskills, waiting on tables and stuff. But you also learn, the one element I didn't talk about, you learn how to deal with big a-holes too, by the way, which is really, when you're a server kind of thing, which is really valuable in later life, particularly in talk radio,
I
by the
missed
way.
that because
You
I
did?
didn't have those kinds of jobs, and sometimes I struggle when I'm on the
I
show.
think you do pretty well with a-holes, actually. Carol in Winchester, you're on Boston Public Radio. We're talking summer jobs. What's up?
Well, my summer job was working in a delicatessen in Arlington, and I learned more of customer service there than any other job I've ever had. But I've used that particular customer service throughout my life in all different kinds of jobs. He was a wonderful boss. I made 75 cents an hour. And when I was the manager on a Monday, I made $1 an hour.
Whoa.
But it was wonderful. I met so many unusual people from different parts of the world that came in there for certain types of food, and it was just fabulous.
By the way, if I could have worked in a Jewish deli when I was a kid, I would have died and gone to heaven. Carol, thank you very much for the call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. Oh, here's an anonymous. Did you read this one? Read that one.
An anonymous texter said, I worked at a jewelry factory too while I was in high school. I quit after 3 days when the woman working next to me at the foot press got her thumb in the press, got her thumb stuck in the press, and started bleeding profusely.
That's another good reason,
Yeah.
I think. Don't you think so?
Well, I burned my fingers using that little soldering iron
did?
thing. Yeah.
Were you any good at that?
No, oh, it's terrible. Oh, my God, it's terrible.
Yeah. 2 weeks, that's plenty. Barbara in Narragansett, you're on the show. Hi.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
Hi, first-time caller, listener every day.
Love that.
Nice.
Thank you.
And my first job was in Derry, New Hampshire, at the Hinky Dinky Restaurant and Ice Cream.
Hinky Dinky.
Hinky Dinky.
The legendary Hinky Dinky. How is that, Barbara?
Hinky Dinky.
I heard you.
Well, we could never toss out bananas. If they were old, we were told to use them in an upside-down banana split because no one would notice.
So what did that teach you? What life lesson did that teach you, Barbara?
No one gets away with anything. We got complaints on that.
Oh, that's very sad. Very sad story.
It was a good first job.
It was Hinky Dinky. Anybody know Hinky Dinky in this audience?
No,
I think they missed it, actually.
But it
thank
seems
you.
like, the cream and cone
Hinky
down
Dinky.
in Cape Cod?
No.
That's what I think Hinky Dinky probably was like in Derry, like the cream and cone. It's like the little ice cream stand that's just,
owned by a little whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Barbara, that was a fabulous story. Thank you for sharing that with us. 877, why am I giving the numbers? Show's almost over. Where do you want us to? Woody, the UPS driver, said, my first job was at Tony's Seafood in Seekonk, and it lasted 8 years. Wait,
wow.
That's it? And?
Well, now he's a UPS driver, so obviously he went on to do something else.
Okay.
Is this Zoe say she got her first? She got a
read
workers'
that.
comp
Zoe,
job.
our coworker. Go ahead.
She got workers' comp at my college job. She was working at a Froyo. Remember frozen yogurt?
Of course we do.
A place in Coolidge Corner, and she said she was cleaning the machines at the end of the day, and the blades sliced through her fingers. Thank you, Zoe. Had to go to the ER. So that maybe that launched her interest in labor rights.
That's a beautiful story,
because
too.
she was injured on the job.
That's great.
She then went on to found OSHA, as I understand it, as a result of her having her fingers sliced. Kylie.
Kylie, hi.
Hey, guys. This is my second time calling in.
How was your first call? As bad as that other woman's or what?
Oh, it was terrible. I was talking about climate change.
I remember it was horrible.
In the background, but
go ahead. How was today?
But now, here we are now, and things are better. So,
okay, good.
I worked at Starbucks. It was awful. The customers were terrible, but I made some lifelong friends, and it was worth it. And I think everyone should have to go through that.
So I mean this sincerely, because dealing with horrible customers, how did that help you sort of maneuver your way through horrible customers in life, Kylie?
I mean, I just think once you get to see what the general public is like, and there are some good people out there too, and you get used to it and you understand that this is what is out there, it just makes you a better person. And I think everyone should have to experience it.
You sound like a pretty good person, actually. Kylie, that was great. Thank you very much for the call. Do you want to hear another horrible story from our coworkers?
Yeah,
Read
apparently
this one.
everybody they all went on to work at GBH after having horrible misfortune.
Go ahead.
This is coming from Nicole. Nicole says she was poked. She was poked in the eye and the forehead, got a bad bruise. Apparently, it was at the hands of a clothing hook.
Yeah.
And her manager immediately made her sign a paper that said that she was injured to document it. But it turns out that she signed it, and it also said, that's why I have to read the fine print, Nicole.
Yeah.
It also said that she couldn't get a workers' comp claim. And she said, I didn't read it because I couldn't see. I was in pain. And so she got duped into signing away her rights on one of her first jobs.
Well, that's very sad. These are all sad, really sad stories.
They really
I
are
had no idea it was going to degenerate into this. Well, luckily the show's over, Andrea.
Jamie wants us to know that he had nothing to do with Nicole's injury.
Can I tell you something? He says he has nothing to do with everything bad that happens
very true.
in the show.
That's very true.
It's all lies. Go ahead.
Thank you for listening to yet another edition of Boston Public Radio. And thanks to everybody who came down to the BPL. Thanks to our callers and our texters. Keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast. Check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tune in Monday for GBH reporter Adam Riley calling in from the Democratic National Convention, plus Andrew Gottlieb of the Association to Preserve Cape Cod on the proposed machine gun range at Joint Base Cape Cod. That's going to be an interesting conversation, which he said would significantly degrade the Upper Cape's water quality. Also joining, we have NYU medical ethicist Art Kaplan, the Reverends Irene Monroe and Emmett G. Price III, and Harvard's Khalil Gibran Muhammad. Our wonderful crew is Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, and Hannah Loss. And we have additional support from Ariana Gonzalez.
I want to say, Ariana's last day today, she has been nothing short of spectacular. I am told she is leaving for an internship with actually an organization in D.C. based here, the New England Council, which is wonderful. Ariana, I know where you are. There you are. Let's hear it. She has been nothing short of great. Thanks, and we love knowing you, and stay in touch.
Thank you, Ariana.
She really is great.
Good luck.
Marjorie feels the same way, by the way. If she was here, she'd say the same thing.
Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Kevin Pace Jr., Juan Jose Cadena, and Amanda Francis. Thanks, too, to our hosts at the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lenox Hotel. Stay tuned to the Culture Show's Week in Review starting right after the 2 o'clock news here on 89.7 GBH, live from the BPL studio. I'm Andrea Cabral.
I'm Jim Browder. You were fabulous. You'll be back.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And the Museum of Science with Survival of the Slowest, a new live animal exhibit that demonstrates evolution down the path less traveled. MOS.org. The Australian Pink Floyd returns to the stage and celebrates 50 years of Pink Floyd's classic album, Dark Side of the Moon. We've got tickets to their upcoming concert, and you can sample their extraordinary show tonight starting at 8:30 on GBH2.
The Moth, live at the Wilbur Theater in Boston, returns this October, and GBH has your pair of tickets. Experience the storytelling phenomenon that proves time and again the power of sharing real experiences to inspire, entertain, and unify. For a limited time, support your GBH listening and secure your pair of tickets to see The Moth live. The sooner you give, the better your seats. For tickets and more information, visit gbh.org/moth.
I'm John the Claw Parker, engineer for Boston Public Radio, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review. First up, a rallying cry for political rallies. Musicians are sick of the same old tune, having to threaten politicians with legal action for using their music as a soundtrack for candidates' political ambitions without permission. Celine Dion and the estate of Isaac Hayes are among the latest to object, but what protections do they actually have? From there, it's another spin on politics and music with the DJ-in-chief, Barack Obama. The release of his summer playlist is a much-anticipated tradition, giving unknown artists a boost along the way. Then it's Banksy's Graffiti Menagerie. The artist wraps 9 days of non-stop animal murals. And we remember both the great actor Jenna Rowlands and Wallace Amos, the man behind Famous Amos Cookies. That's next on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Vice President Kamala Harris is expected to unveil her plan for the U.S. economy later this hour during a campaign event in Raleigh, North Carolina. She's called for an increase in the child tax credit up to $6,000. NPR's Asma Khalid reports Harris will focus on more topics later, such as the high cost of housing and groceries.
Harris is calling for the construction of 3 million new housing units to deal with the shortage in the country. And she says she'd offer tax breaks to home builders to help. She also wants to give first-time home buyers $25,000 toward a down payment and put limits on the ability of Wall Street investors to buy up rental units in bulk. Harris is trying to zero in on cutting expenses that are top of mind for voters: housing, healthcare, and groceries. And the price of groceries are another issue Harris is expected to focus on during her speech in North Carolina. She's calling for a federal ban on price gouging in the food sector. Her campaign specifically cites the price of meat. Asma Khalid, NPR News.
Former President Donald Trump says his campaign's doing well. He cites a national poll this week by Fox News that showed him leading Harris by 1 point.
And Fox News has always been my worst poll, believe it or not. And even Fox News had me up by 1 or 2 points yesterday. Came out, I think, 2 points, 1 point. I also think I tend to poll low. In some cases, really low. In 2016, I was polling low because people didn't want to say who they're voting for. I don't know if that's supposed to be a good thing or a bad thing, but it is what it is.
The Fox News poll had a margin of error of 3%. Israeli settlers attacked a Palestinian village in the occupied West Bank late last night. Palestinian health officials say the settlers killed a local man and injured other people when they rampaged the village. NPR's Kat Lonesdorf reports Israeli leaders condemn the violence.
Dozens of masked settlers stormed a village near Nablus, shooting live ammunition at residents and burning homes and cars. The Israeli military was called to disperse the crowd and later issued a statement calling it a, quote, serious incident that would be investigated. The military said one Israeli civilian was taken into custody. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the attack. Far-right Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, an ultra-nationalist settler who has previously defended violent actions by settlers, called Thursday's rioters, quote, criminals. The frequency of violence by Israeli settlers against Palestinians in the West Bank has doubled since the start of the war in Gaza last October, according to the UN. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Meanwhile, mediators are still attempting to reach agreement on a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. From Washington, this is NPR.
From the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Craig Lamolt. Governor Maura Healey announced today the state will take control of St. Elizabeth's Medical Center in Brighton by eminent domain in order to keep the hospital open and transition it to a new owner. The hospital is one of 5 being sold by bankrupt Steward Healthcare. Healey said deals have been reached to transition operations at the 4 other Steward hospitals. Healey announced for the first time who the buyers of those hospitals are. If the deals are finalized, Lawrence General Hospital will operate Holy Family Hospitals in both Haverhill and Methuen. Morton Hospital and St. Anne's Hospital in Fall River would be run by Lifespan, and Boston Medical Center would take over Good Samaritan as well as St. Elizabeth's once that transition is complete. 2 other Steward hospitals are set to close at the end of the month despite efforts to save them. Healey said the state is working to help find new jobs for staff at Kearney Hospital in Dorchester and Neshoba Valley Medical Center in Ayer. Massachusetts drivers who work for Lyft and Uber are now making a higher minimum wage. The new pay rate of $32.50 an hour took effect this week. It's a result of a settlement reached this summer between the companies and Massachusetts Attorney General Andrea Campbell. The settlement resolved the potential November ballot question on the driver's employment status, but a separate question on their right to unionize is still moving ahead. Roxana Rivera is with the Service Employees International Union.
The only way, though, that we're going to be able to enforce those standards that the AG has set, as well as improve on them, right, will be through the workers themselves forming an organization.
Massachusetts drivers also now have health insurance and paid sick leave. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include USPS, dedicated to providing businesses with shipping options, working to help businesses avoid shipping challenges with USPS Ground Advantage. Learn more at USPS.com/advantage.
What if you could have a direct say in where your tax dollars go? Like maybe a program paying people to help seniors clear snow from their property?
I would love to see a budget for that for seniors.
That's just one of the ideas floated by residents at a recent meeting as a process known as participatory budgeting comes to Boston.
When we see this implemented in different places across the world, we tend to see increases in trust of government, increases in civic participation.
I'm Soraya Wintersmith. You can find that story at gbhnews.org.
Welcome to the Culture Show, live at the Boston Public Library. I'm Jared Bowen.
I'm Callie Crossley.
And I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. It's time for our Arts and Culture Week in Review. Here's what it sounded like.
Former President Barack Obama is sharing the songs he's jamming to this summer.
Former President Donald Trump's recent rally in Montana attracted thousands of supporters as the Republican nominee looks to hit the right note with voters ahead of Election Day. But Trump and his campaign are striking the wrong chord with some, thanks to the music that was played at the event.
Banksy has unveiled his 9th animal artwork in as many days, and this time it's at London Zoo. The graffiti of a gorilla, seal and birds is in a similar style to the artist's 8 other animal works that have been unveiled across London.
Hello, Ethan. It's Pirelli. We would like you to shoot the 2025 calendar.
I'm on it.
Ethan?
Tawny, what do you think about Pirelli?
Pirelli? Fabulous.
We don't have much time, though. I hope that's okay.
That's okay. It's not really about what they're going to be wearing. It's about what they're not going to be wearing, right?
I love it. Exactly.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles.
Tell me what you want me to be, how you want me to be. I can be that. I can be anything. You tell me, Nikki.
Bye-bye, famous Amos. Thank you for the hallucination. It was wonderful. Maybe we do it again sometime.
Well, as you just heard, is Donald Trump tone deaf when it comes to selecting the soundtrack for his campaign rallies? From the White House to bringing down the House, Barack Obama releases his summer playlist for 2024. Banksy blankets London with a graffiti menagerie. From there, we remember legendary actor Jenna Rowlands, a woman of influence, and we mark the life and delicious enterprise of Wally Amos, the showman who created the bite-sized cookie empire, Famous Amos. But first up, former President Donald Trump's campaign seems to be hitting all the wrong notes. His political rally soundtrack has left artists who have not authorized the use of their music outraged. Most recently, that includes Celine Dion and the estate of Isaac Hayes. This has been ongoing in these political campaigns for many campaign cycles now. And what I find very fascinating about this is how layered it is, because different people have different levels of approval for the music that can be used. But ultimately, you have a whole range of artists like the Rolling Stones, Tom Petty, Queen, R.E.M., Rihanna, the list goes on and on and on, who don't want Donald Trump to be using their music at his rallies, and yet he keeps doing it.
I don't understand how it is possible, because one of the things that stood out for me about this lawsuit from the Isaac Hayes estate is that they're asking for money. So they've calculated how many times he's played the song and how much, therefore, they feel that the estate should be owed. It should be noted that VP Harris is using Freedom by Beyonce, which she very clearly has said 15 times and more. I paid for. Beyonce gave me permission. So this is the first time. Usually what you just said happens. We hear he plays the stuff, people get mad about it, never heard the money part come in, and can't figure out why he can just keep doing it brazenly and nothing happens.
Well, as you said, Jared, it's very layered, as we know the music business is, right? So there's the artist who is performing the song, who may or may not have the rights to that song. There's also the person who was the songwriter for the song. Then you have these umbrella licensee organizations like ASCAP or BMI, where a venue or the place where the rally is happening, maybe they have blanket rights to use anything in that catalog. Maybe the campaign has paid for blanket rights to use anything. Where it becomes an issue, I think it sounds like, is there, all of these organizations basically say, like, if you, songwriter, or you, owner of song, have an issue, you do have some rights to sort of do something. The thing here is that, like, many have done something. They send a cease and desist letter or whatever it is. But I actually think that Donald Trump and his campaign are fine with this. This is it's not a bad thing for them for this to be out there in the world. Yeah, we talk about culture wars here. This is a different kind of culture war, I think. I think he's embracing this and inviting it, because Celine, for example, Celine Dion is stepping in because he just used her, and I say her in air quotes, her My Heart Will Go On from Titanic. I only say her in air quotes because we identify that song with Celine Dion because she sang it, but she didn't write it. So she doesn't actually have the right, amazingly, to go back and say, you can't use my song. But of course, she can do this in a PR war, in a PR front. So I think it then, what seems to be happening is the Trump campaign can then turn around and say, see, look at the liberal artists who hate me, and that seems to inflame this even more, and that seems to be what it's turning into. Although in the case of Isaac Hayes, as you say, Callie, they have every right now to demand that $3 million because they've put a number on every single time he's played that at a campaign rally, when, again, as you said, Edgar, that this is stipulated in the contract that they can pull it at any time. By the way, if we want to have a little flavor of that campaign, this is Hold On, I'm Coming, written by Isaac Hayes. So again, because he wrote it, he has the right, or his estate has the right to pull it back, performed by Sam
being clear with everybody out there.
That's right.
We've worked that out.
We're under fair use, I think.
Yes.
So we're in a different category.
It's a whole other thing.
Yes. I want to point out that years ago, I'm from Memphis, which is where Isaac Hayes is from. One of the local TV stations decided to take another one of his songs, the one with the great guitar riff from the Shaft theme. Dun, dun, dun,
Yeah.
dun, dun, dun. It's great. And they cut their open to the music, which was fantastic. And Isaac Hayes let it play. He was alive. He let it play for a while, and he said, "No, you can't really use that." And they said, "Oh, okay." And so no fight. Then they just took it down.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of. Jared, as you talk about, I mean, one of the interesting things here is just is that larger issue of the relationship with artists and their music. Like, the whole thing that Taylor Swift is going through, the whole thing with the Taylor version stuff, is that she doesn't even own, the music that she has made. So, I think that it's kind of. It's tricky. I think we're in a time where artists are a little bit more cognizant about that. The music industry is changing. I think this maybe changes as we look down the road. But I don't know. It's also politicians. To me, and apparently legally, there's a framework for this. There's sort of like, did you play the song at the campaign rally when the crowd was just kind of milling about, or did you do it like right after you spoke, in which case you're sort of attaching yourself a little bit more intimately to that artist?
Or using it as walk-on music.
Or using it as walk-on music.
I think that's the
There's
issue.
a big difference between those
also
two
using
things.
your supporters, because Kid Rock is a supporter of Donald Trump, as is Jason Aldean, Billy Ray Cyrus. There's no shortage of musicians.
So why don't you just use those people?
Which is why I think it becomes this PR issue. Because if you look at the other side, and Kamala Harris and the music she's using, I think she has been very pointed in saying she's using Beyonce's Freedom. I'm not just using Freedom. I solicited Beyonce. I got permission, and she's on board to do this. We're also seeing Kamala Harris leverage music, or maybe not even need to leverage it, but you see the musicians who rushed forward to her, wanting to support her, and this is only a boon because this represents millions of new voters who are listening to new music, like Charlie XCX and others who really are pushing this forward through memes and music and galvanizing young voters.
Meg Thee Stallion. Not a bad intro for your rally if you want some support. I mean, I think it's crazy that there is now a list called musicians who've said do not use my music, former President Trump.
But that is to Jared's point, it fits right into his narrative. The narrative is basically like, hey, they're out to get me, they're out to get us, and it's just yet another example. It's another data point for them to say, look at all these people who are just out to get me, and by extension, they're out to get you.
Well, with much less controversy, although there is a little bit here.
Yeah.
The beats go on. In another spin on politics and music, former President Barack Obama released his summer playlist this week, and this is really interesting because it runs the gamut of music, contemporary to way back. In fact, here's a sampling of former President Obama's summer playlist 2024. That for you. That was Tupac's How Do You Want It, the Rolling Stones' I Can't Get No Satisfaction, Charlie XCX's 365, and Shabuzi's A Bar Song, Tipsy.
Yes.
So those last two are a little bit significant. This is where maybe some of the controversy comes into play. Okay, A Bar Song, Tipsy, that's totally fine. But Charlie XCX, this song, 365, is kind of has a lot to do with cocaine and running into the bathroom and doing some lines. Okay, President Barack Obama.
I mean, that pretty much is the song.
Yeah. I think he likes the beat.
Oh, is that what it is?
That's what I'm saying. No. I just want to point out that this list has boosted so many artists and brought artists to the attention of many of the rest of us who might not have known them. I interviewed Arouj Aftab, whose song Mohabbat was on his 2021 list. She went on to win the Grammy in 2022, first Pakistani woman to win a Grammy. Never heard of the woman until it was on his list. So I appreciate the wide variety for those people that I already appreciate and those I may come to appreciate.
Yeah. I mean, this is very. Barack Obama has been doing this since 2015, and he took a couple years off. But he's also he's kind of a master politician and a master at maintaining his brand. And he doesn't do things that he's not out in the public sphere as often as he once was. But when he is, it's very thought through, it's very careful, and this is very classic Obama. There's some surprises, it's very diverse, there's old music, there's new music, there's all these different genres. And he insists, and I actually do buy this, he insists that he comes up with this list. Yeah. I think Jared is saying there's no way, or you're sort of giving a big laugh there. You don't think he actually curates it?
I'm definitely the skeptical one here because he's been pressed on this a little bit before. Hassan Minhaj asked him this, and he had sort of clever answers. I mean, this is a wide range of music. This is a very busy man.
Not as busy.
Not as busy as he once was. Yeah,
I think he's even busier. I mean, all the Netflix stuff, the foundation, having to read all these books and make that list because that list just came out last week. I mean, this man is doing a lot if we're going to think he's doing this. But, and Edgar, as you say, I mean, this is music for everybody, which is by design. Not that he's ever going to be running for office again, but he really covers the swath. But I do wonder.
I will say that here is Exhibit A for me and why I think at least he curates some of this list. I think, this is my theory, I think he's trying to reclaim with all of this Tim Walz Big Dad energy thing. I think he's like, I can also have Big Dad energy, and so I'm going to make sure I put a Sting song in there. Now that is Big Dad energy.
And see, I related to Smokey Robinson and the Miracles. I don't love you.
Yeah, but that's a cool, that song is cool, Callie.
But
That's
it's still,
really
but it's
Big
old.
Dad energy.
But it's old.
Yeah, but it's not cheesy like Sting.
He's also getting a little criticism for people he didn't include, like Kendrick Lamar and Chappell Roan.
Yeah, she's mad.
Yeah, very mad. And a lot of the queer community is pretty mad, too, that song wasn't included. Because, again, you have somebody right from the heartland. This would have fit perfectly in that wide swath of population he's trying to address, and that didn't make it. But, who doesn't love a list? We all love a list.
I love a list. I love a list.
And he's good.
He's good at it.
Him or whoever it is that does it, the team that does it for him. I mean, this is as these things go, this is pretty darn good.
I think so.
Yeah, we didn't spend as much time talking about the books because that came out last week. And this is this week's Week in Review, but check out that list too. It's really fun. Well, coming up, Italian tire company Pirelli drives people to distraction, returning nudity to its storied calendar. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
When the Democratic National Convention goes to Chicago, so will GBH News. I'm politics reporter Adam Riley.
And I'm digital producer Alexi Cohan. Join us for on-the-ground coverage of the 2024 DNC. We'll bring you the latest from the convention floor, hear from the Massachusetts delegates and delegation, and give you a behind-the-scenes look at this historic event.
Follow along online at gbhnews.org and, as always, right here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And the Cambridge Homes, a nonprofit, independent, and assisted living community in Cambridge, offering residents supportive services, as well as cultural, educational, and social programs. thecambridgehomes.org/tradition. And Carr Financial Group, independent fiduciaries committed to guiding investors through the changing economy with wealth management, financial, and retirement planning services. Consultations can be scheduled at carrfinancial.com.
A proposed lithium mine in Serbia is spurring protests over its potential impact on the environment.
We are saying no to corporate powers that are going to extract our country and leave trash that's going to poison future generations.
But the mineral is in high demand because it is crucial for the batteries that run electric vehicles. More on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
This is The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, here with co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Horwick III. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes anonymous street artist Banksy's animal instincts. Over the course of 9 nights, he unleashed a series of murals across London, from pelicans to primates. I love this story so much because it became not just an English story, because the rest of the world began following this, especially if you're looking on Instagram, where Banksy has one of his sole means of communication. But every single morning, as I said, for 9 mornings, people were waking up to find a different animal, and we're talking about gorillas and a wolf and fish and pelicans who were fishing, a goat on a precipice, all over London, all manner of places, from billboards to the zoo to a police call box. This just was so fun. It reminded me of this time in Boston when this photograph suddenly appeared on the Hancock building, which was curated by Pedro Alonso, Culture Show contributor for AI, Actual Intelligence, and it just left the city because the entire thing wasn't up at once, and everybody for a long time was talking about, what is this that just appeared on this skyscraper? Who did it? Who's responsible? What is it? It was so much fun.
I agree. I couldn't love it anymore. The baboon releasing the birds and the other monkeys, I think, was my favorite.
On the wall of the zoo.
Yeah. On the wall of the zoo,
very
which is
clever.
just so great. Yeah. But I have to say, one that just so intrigued me were the 2 elephants with their trunks touching from different windows.
Yeah.
So, everybody wants to know what's the meaning. I gotta figure that 9 nights means something too. Anybody got any theories about what that might mean?
I mean, just go to the internet. There's all kinds of theories. You want a theory? Go to the internet. You can find a theory about anything on the internet.
I'm asking you, with your in-depth knowledge, Edgar.
I don't know. I mean, this is one of the things. This is like kind of what Banksy does, right? For somebody whose sort of shtick is that nobody knows who they are, he's such a showman. It's amazing that he's able to pull this off. But the thing is this works as just pure whimsy. It maybe works. I mean, things we know about Banksy, we know that issues of ecology and animal rights are important to him, so it could be as simple as that.
You said him.
Yeah,
sorry.
Well, that's because other people refer to him as him.
I'm just kidding.
To them.
I think we do know that we probably actually know who it is.
Oh,
yeah,
we do?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And, but then there's room in this for a fair amount of speculation, whether that be, people have theories, some of them, which kind of seem like are just like pressing political issues, like the war in Gaza or the riots that were happening throughout the UK. But also it's like, the fish one is in a police box, and they're piranhas. It's not just, so there's maybe something in that. There's maybe more here than just the whimsy, but it works on all of those levels.
And I realize I should back up a little bit to explain that for people who may not have heard of Banksy, this is somebody who has been working since the 1990s, first in Bristol and then in London, and now really all over the world. And yes, we don't know the identity, although the BBC a couple of years ago unearthed an interview where Banksy said that his first name was Robbie, and a lot of people think it's Robbie Gunningham from Bristol, although other people think that maybe it's a collective of artists, and that's how this can all be accomplished without anybody in all of these years actually figuring out who it is. But there was no comment from the Banksy team about what this was, although The Guardian reported that it had been communicated to them from the Banksy team that this is nothing more than kind of bringing joy to people, because who doesn't like to look at animals and just find joy in animals and joy and delight in having new art every single day in really troubling times. I also like this theory that for some reason people are arguing that a lot of Banksy's work can be read backwards. So if the last piece was about this primate lifting up the curtain, letting the animals out, and then we trace it back to see all of the animals throughout London, it's pretty fascinating.
But we're a part of the... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I have a question for you, Jared. So how, not just how does he do it without being seen, but did he roll out the stencils and paste them up? I mean, I'm really curious about how it gets up. Is that actual paint? Is there some other technique? Like, what is happening there?
I mean, my sense is, and I don't know, but I've thought a lot about this too, because you have to be really quick under the cover of darkness to do this, that it's all obviously mapped out where it's going to be, because again, we're talking about like a pelican fishing over a fish and chip store, so it looks like the pelican is fishing from the fish on the sign of the fish and chips. So it's very clever what he's done, and going back to the zoo gate, letting the animals out. But my sense is, he or they, or she, perhaps, roll up with a stencil and spray paint, do it, and they're out of there.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Yeah.
I was going to say, the thing about this that I love in part is that, we, or the public, the general public, is sort of part of the whole thing, right? And the fact that this happens sequentially over 9 days, and that there's this kind of, this like new little surprise each day. And there's, I found myself thinking about the Olympics in Paris and this kind of sense of community that gets built around that. And this reminds me of that a little bit, that for this 9 days, if you were in London, you're just kind of a part of this thing that is unfolding over a course of a week plus. And it's just kind of great.
Except for in the category of we can't have nice things. One of them was stolen.
And one was defaced.
A couple of them were defaced. So we do have the remaining animals.
Yes. Oh, my God.
Well, now on to the naked truth about nudity, sex, and sexiness, all in pop culture. After a decade of modesty, it's all back in the mainstream. One of the biggest signals is a recent photo shoot for the Pirelli calendar. I have to say, I didn't know anything. I don't know if either of you knew about the Pirelli calendar. I didn't.
I didn't know about. When I started reading about it, then I realized I had heard about it a long time ago, but I just missed it as a thing.
So this is an, of course, annual calendar by the Italian tire company Pirelli, and for a long time there are very sexy images and photography in the calendar. And then, as the Me Too movement happened, Pirelli took a pause, and for a few years they were doing different things. They had Annie Leibovitz, the great photographer, step in at one point, and she photographed fully clothed Fran Lebowitz, Agnes Gund, the great arts philanthropist, and Patti Smith, and things of that ilk for the next couple of years. But this year, it's all changed. And Ethan James Green, who is a young, rising, hotshot photographer, who actually also included himself in the calendar, has worked with his subjects, and a lot of them are unclothed this year.
Yeah. Very unclothed. John Boyega.
Unclothed.
I'm just saying, John Boyega. Okay. This is kind of back.
Your water is right in front of you.
Yes, I know. This is kind of back in the old days when there were these calendars hanging up in
the pinups.
Gas stations.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. Where they were fixing cars and stuff. So it reminds me of that. As a tire company, so I'm thinking it was in that mode. But it's Americans are weird about nudity. Remember last year the Florida principal who got first sanctioned and then fired for having shown a picture of the David, Michelangelo's David, to her class to talk about art. That's where the discussion should be. And parents freaked out, said it was pornographic, and she was the principal of school. She eventually got fired. And then she got invited to Florence by the gallery to say, why don't you come look at it in person, because, of course it's art. So there's a whole, pull and push. YouGov did a survey to find out how Americans feel about nudity, and pretty much most of them said it's okay if it's, artistic. Yeah. But there was a strong band of people who felt it's pornographic, period. And then we have Robert Mapplethorpe, who I believe the upset about his work was less about the nudity and more about the religious iconography. But that's my take on it.
And I think the homosexuality too.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But you got to kind of draw this. I mean, it's interesting because there is nudity, just kind of that is just a naked person, right? And then there's nudity with the idea that it is sexualized in some way, or that that it is sort of no. It doesn't have to be, at least in my mind. I'm not talking about it being exploitative, but whether or not that it is sort of aiming to be sexy in some way, which this is, which I think this is an interesting shift in where we have been. I think that we sort of pressed the pause button largely as a culture on this in the wake of the Me Too movement and all of that stuff. And now I see us carefully returning back a little bit. And the question is, has anything changed?
See, this is why I find this very fascinating, because we are in a culture shift right now. Yeah. And I think we're better off for it, because I think what happened, I've also been tracking this through film, and so have others, actually. So, of course, we came through a period of the 1970s where you had films like Clute, and then you move into the 80s where you have Porky's and An Officer and a Gentleman, and very highly sexualized films into the 1990s, and Basic Instinct and films of that nature. And then it all just fell off. Exactly. From basically about 2000 through the 2010s until recently, we didn't really see this. It all changed. And I think the Me Too movement brought about a great conversation because there weren't a lot of what they call intimacy coordinators on the sets of films. So people did feel exploited, and people did feel that they were forced, even though they might have contracts, were forced to do nudity in films and they didn't want to. But now it seems that there has been a course correction so that you have the intimacy coordinators. Now, in this era of all the things you can find online and of OnlyFans, where people in whole new generations are getting more and more comfortable about what they put of themselves out onto the internet, we're returning to this. Look at Saltburn, look at Challengers, and you see that this is coming back in our society. And I love that you said that, Kelly, about America, because I think America is changing and is ready, at least some of America, and is ready to just... This is what it is.
So I would point out that I believe that it was the online, the HBOs that helped turn the tide with film. So that's the first thing. Yeah. The second thing is that when we talk about, traditional art spaces, usually the nudes are mostly female and not male. So there's that. The Guerrilla Girls back in 1989 said, "What's up with this, Metropolitan? Well, let's take a look at what you're doing here and putting on the wall," and we feel it's exploitative in that way. So there is that to consider. Also, I think there's a difference between nudity and naked. And it's
that's kind of what I was.
Yeah, I think what you were saying.
I think the big thing that fingers crossed that I hope is different here is the role of agency in this, and whether the person is choosing to do this or not. Not only just the safety of it, but like to your point, Jared, if you're posting yourself on some website and you are choosing to do that and you have control over that, that is very different than being a 22-year-old actress trying to make it in Hollywood, and somebody says, well, you're going to have to take your top off if you want to get parts. Those are two very, very different things. And in this case, I mean, I think about this photographer who you're talking about, he began his career as a model. He was 17 years old. So here's somebody who kind of understands that side of it, and maybe that's playing into why some of these folks are feeling good about doing this with him, because it's maybe they have been given the amount of agency that they need to be comfortable in these spaces.
So then do we think that the portraits in Playboy are art and are people in them have the agency?
Well, I went back and I looked at that because remember a number of years ago, Playboy stopped for a moment.
Yes.
We thought it was forever, but they stopped for a moment, actually having complete nudes in the magazine. And then I think it only took about a year before they thought, okay, well, we need to rethink this. I have a feeling money was really involved.
That is
as
correct.
much as we love the writing in Playboy, it's not all about the writing. And they came back, and it's not the same kind of nudes anymore. I didn't look at it myself, I have to say. But
of course not.
You are an American after all.
I didn't want HR and GBH coming down at me. What's with all these searches, Jared? Although for this segment they will see a lot, so hopefully they're listening to this segment. But it sounds like they've changed the whole tone of it.
Interesting.
All right, well, coming up, from race to gender, blind casting is now taking on age. That and more next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
I see a police car rapidly approaching.
This week on Stories from the Stage.
He motions for my grandma to roll the window down. She's deaf, and we use sign language to communicate. I'm gonna have to ask you both to keep your dome light off for the remainder of your trip. Basically, this man is asking me and my grandma to not talk until we get home.
Stories from the Stage, Sunday night at 7, only on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and the Museum of Science with Survival of the Slowest, a new live animal exhibit that demonstrates evolution down the path less traveled. MOS.org. And Rockland Trust Bank. Their team is dedicated to bringing the vision of your business to life, providing support and advice tailored to your specific goals. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC.
Indonesia's capital has a lot of the problems most big cities face. Air pollution, gridlock, not enough green space. Oh, it's also sinking. The solution? Build a new capital from scratch.
We try to come in with almost 180 degrees opposite of what Jakarta is.
How to construct a whole new city, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Herwick III. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes the stage and to some degree film, flipping the script on age by casting older actors in younger roles. Admittedly, we're seeing this more in England, where a couple of years ago, the 80-something-year-old Ian McKellen played Hamlet, a man in his 30s, where Imelda Staunton, right now, a woman in her 70s, is playing Dolly from Hello, Dolly, who's a woman, presumably the character is in her 40s, because she's finding relationship midlife. And we saw Geraldine James last summer at 72 playing Rosalind in As You Like It, somebody who could be as young as a teenager, but she was doing this as a 72-year-old. So we've talked about losing gender from some roles, having color-conscious casting, paying less attention to race when casting, and now this seems, at least in England, to some degree here, it seems to be changing for age.
Which I think is a good thing, and it reminds me, when I first read this piece and I started thinking about it, how older performers can infuse something in roles and parts, and I specifically started thinking about ballad singers. Someone can sing a ballad at 30, and no offense, but by the time you hear somebody sing that when they're in their 60s, there's depths and levels and colors you just can't bring because you didn't live that. So that is translated to the stage too, and these are, we should say, all powerful performers. We're talking about people at the top of their game. I don't think you can just let any old body do it. And I would just point out that some of that depends on the role and the actor. To wit, when the stage performance of The Wiz went away and it was going to be a film, Stephanie Mills was 17 years old playing the lead role. Diana Ross wanted to play the lead role in the film, and she went around everybody to make that happen. Mistake! Mistake! And mistake. So that just did not work.
Well, before we get to you, Edgar, here's in the category of not a mistake. So we said Imelda Staunton is doing Hello, Dolly. We couldn't find sound of her, but just a few years ago, Bette Midler, who is also in her 70s, played Dolly Levi. So here's Bette Midler in the Hello, Dolly reboot, for which she won the Tony Award, by the way, singing I Put My Hand In.
She can sing, that lady.
She can sing.
She's okay.
Hello, that makes the big difference.
And I saw this performance, and not for a second did I will speak for the rest of the audience. I have no shame in doing that. Think that she didn't belong in that role for all the reasons you just said, Callie. That she was bringing her lifetime of wisdom to this role, and this is why this woman, who is single herself but slowly falling in love with David Hyde Pierce, is finding that she can interfere and intervene in the lives of the youth who need a little hand in there because she has guided it herself, and it just worked beautifully.
I find myself wondering how much of this is a response to the conditions on the ground, which is to say you have, especially when we're looking at female actors that we're talking about, these powerhouse women, like an Imelda Staunton is a great example, right? So here is somebody who is fantastic, who is a draw. Like, you know, if you put her in your play, people are going to come see it. You also have a dearth, to some extent, of powerhouse roles for women of this age. So how do you solve the problem? You can't do MAME every time, right? So you say, you know what? We're gonna take one of those few powerhouse roles that's out there for women. We're gonna do Hello Dolly, but we're gonna do it with a 70-year-old because she's a draw, because she's great, and we'll see what happens.
So there's another way to do this, is to take a little risk, which is what Sean Wong did in his film Dee Dee, which is this fabulous film. I believe it's still in theaters, independent film. It's kind of autobiographical about him growing up as a Taiwanese American in America, and it's hilarious. So in this film, Joan Chen, who is 63, plays his mother, and I think in this film he's about maybe just turning into a teenager, so about 13 years old. So you do the math and you think, well, that doesn't quite work, but again, you immediately forget it. Here's a little scene from Dee Dee in which, again, we hear Joan Chen at 63 playing his mother, walking into his room when he's with a group of friends.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Chris' mother.
Hey, I really like your paintings. Really beautiful, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You notice?
Yeah, I love the colors and stuff.
I paint all myself.
That's cool.
Yeah,
really nice. Wait, so if you're Asian, does that mean your husband is white?
What? My husband, Asian.
How are you half Asian? Yeah, you said that.
She's probably just forgetting. Mom, just get out right now. Mom, just get out, Mom. Get out, Mom. Get out.
Yeah, he had kind of lied to his friends about his background. But first of all, Joan Chen is likely going to get an Oscar nomination from this. She's just radiant in the film. We had Sean Wong on the Culture Show. He talked about just how she brought his film to a whole different level by having an actor of that caliber. And again, it doesn't matter the age, and it just worked.
I would add one other thing that makes a difference, I think, and that is, this is going to sound really stupid, but the costuming. Because in The Wiz, here is Diana Ross, 33 years old, playing a 16 or 17-year-old, 12 in the book, wearing the costume of a 12 or 16-year-old doesn't work. But if black don't crack and Asian don't crack with Joan Chen, with her costuming, unless she, it's fine as long as she has the depth to do the character.
Yeah, I mean, they did it for leading men in Hollywood through the
of
entire
course.
middle of the 20th
Thank you
century,
for saying
right?
that.
You had Cary Grants and Jimmy Stewart playing, kind of fathers or romantic interests way beyond their sort of quote-unquote prime years, Yeah, I mean, I think, to your point, though, Callie, it's an interesting thing to think through because there are going to be some situations, some roles, some times when this maybe can become distracting or not work. So I think that, but I love the idea of this as another variable in theater and in film, and saying, like, if we open up ourselves to the possibility of this, you are sort of, there's this whole, again, variable, this whole other variable that you can be playing with in terms of maybe it is distracting, but maybe it being distracting can be part of the point. I mean, I think about that Bob Dylan biopic where they have 4 different people playing him, including Cate Blanchett. There's a fun, creative way to say, I'm going to cast this in a different way. We're going to sort of attack this in a different way. So I'm all for this. I think it'd be very cool.
And to talk about how universal Dylan is for these different characters and ages, in the same way Shakespeare is always universal.
That's right.
Different characters, different ages. Well, next, Jenna Rowlands, the powerhouse actor of independent cinema, most notably for her decades-long collaboration with her husband, John Cassavetes, died this week at age 94. We had only learned just a couple of months ago that she was living with Alzheimer's disease, so she had a long and storied career. It became more poignant that she had been living with Alzheimer's disease, given one of her most famous late roles in The Notebook. But this is a moment to remember somebody who was such an iconoclast with John Cassavetes, and just, as we said, a powerhouse career in independent film.
I watched A Woman Under the Influence yesterday in preparation for this, and I had seen it before years ago. and I like John Cassavetes' films, and I like his films with her, but like, wow. I mean, wow. There is nothing like her and him partnered together in making films.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a bit of that film, again, from 1974, directed by John Cassavetes.
Vodka. On the left there. You make the drinks, Zip, and I'll watch them.
Doctor? Doctor, aren't you going to give her a shot?
No! No!
Mabel, we're trying to help you.
Is that what you're trying to do?
Yes.
Oh, is that what you're trying to do?
We are trying to
help you.
Yeah, she's playing a woman whose husband is, because he doesn't know what to do with her, he's trying to have her committed as his way of controlling her.
The power of great actresses, we've mentioned a number of names here today, like Imelda Stanton, who, by the way, was in Downton Abbey, if people want a reference to her, is that they're able not only to immerse themselves in the character, they just kind of disappear.
Yeah.
And if you have somebody with this level of talent, as Jenna Rollins did have, you can watch also over the years how she can even take how wonderful she was at the beginning of her career and develop those layers of colors and the depth of it. So not only she just disappear, you're just in a whole other space with her and the character.
And as somebody who had, and she's talked about the fact that if, she didn't end up meeting Cassavetes and they didn't sort of make the films that they made together in the way they did, she had the looks to sort of do straight down the middle, classic, big kind of roles, and she did do some of that, but she talks about she thinks of herself or thought of herself, which I love, as an artist and them as artists, and they were making films in the house with the family. She said she would sometimes start to dream in character, like she's having dreams in the character that she's playing. She said not the lines she's speaking, she's just in the dream, she's the character. I mean, what? That's awesome.
I saw that too, and I realized I'd never heard another actor say that. They were so deeply immersed. And I have to say, again, the Alzheimer's point is just so compelling, because just recently I watched the Ethan Hawke documentary about the Newmans, Paul and Joanne Woodward. Joanne Woodward was very reluctant to play a woman with Alzheimer's, as she ultimately did in her career, because she lost her mother to Alzheimer's. She went ahead and played that character, and now she has Alzheimer's disease, just as Jenna Rollins, we saw, again, with The Notebook, had it. It just makes it so poignant. Well, we have another loss to talk about this week, too. The king of bite-sized cookies, with a very delicious biography of his own. Wally Amos, a famous Amos, also died this week. He was 88 years old and had a tremendous biography.
Tremendous. First of all, I forgot until we're reading now essentially his bio in the obits that he had been an agent. So an agent, as in representing other folks for many parts of his life.
And William Morris of all agencies.
I know, where everybody starts in the mailroom, as he did, and then you rise up to agent. But for him to be a black man rising to be junior agent at William Morris's powerhouse agency was incredible at the time. And to go through all of that, making the cookies for the friends, for meetings and all of that when he went out on his own, with his own company, and somebody finally saying, you ought to make these cookies and sell them.
They're pretty good.
They're pretty good. And having it turn into this amazing retail store and more.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, talk about the American dream, the hard work and you can do it. That is clearly this man's life. His parents split up when he's 12. He goes to live with his aunt in Harlem. This is where he learns the cookie recipe. He gets interested in cooking. He gets into the business. He's getting passed over because he's a black man. Goes into the Air Force, comes out of the Air Force, starts in the mailroom at the creative agency, makes some friends, gets out to California. And then, for $25,000 that he got from a couple of Hollywood friends, including Marvin Gaye
and Helen Reddy. I am a woman, hear me work. Go ahead.
And then he turns this thing into this entire empire. And also, he's the personality behind it, right? Yes. So he's doing media appearances, doing all kinds of appearances. He's doing television. He's on the cover of Time. He's got the hat. He's got the shirt. What a dude.
Yeah. He's going on to sitcoms. In 1981, he appeared in an episode of Taxi titled Latka's Cookies. He appeared as himself.
Hey, Miss Amos.
What's happening, Latka?
I don't know. What's happening to you? Paul, welcome to my home.
Thank you, but I'm not really here. You're hallucinating. I'm only in your mind.
Well, then welcome to my mind. If I knew you were coming, I would have cleaned it up a bit.
I love how somebody described that because he had started off at the William Morris Agency, he was basically an agent for his cookies and the cookie company, and so he knew exactly what to do to sell them and exactly where to place them, and having these great parties, celebrity-filled parties on Sunset Boulevard. And then, even though ultimately he lost the company, he didn't quite sustain the business part of it, he still kept it going in different regards, and then moved on to literacy awareness. I mean,
which I
it
love.
got better and better.
That part is incredible.
Yes.
His mother never learned to read. He
That is
was
something.
late to learn to read. And they said, like, in the later stages of his life when he was living in Honolulu, he had a little shop where he sold cookies, but he had books in the back. And on Saturdays, he would read to kids for hours.
Hours.
I mean, that is, again, what a dude.
Yeah, I know. What a dude.
Wow.
And at the time, you know, there's always these people that rise to the level of kind of ambassadors for black community, symbols of success, and he was one. And the hat and the shirt and his affability, his ability to
Hat and the shirt in the Smithsonian,
yes,
by the way.
that's right.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that lightning means it's time for our lightning round, which signals the stories, the headlines that caught our attention this week. Callie, what was yours?
Okay, so mine is a satirical comedy, musical going on, will be going on. Well, it is going on now, but it'll be more next week when the Democratic National Convention gets to Chicago. It's called the 44, the unofficial, unsanctioned Obama musical. It's a satirical look at the Barack presidency. Let me just give you some headlines. There is a chorus called Wham! White Heterosexual American Men, with an honorary black member, Herman Cain. And the tribute to him is sung to Prince's Purple Rain. And there's more and more. Mitch McConnell is a turtle. There's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. The reviews are fantastic.
Yeah.
They say it's really something. The premise of it is that this is remembered, and they deliberately said this, the hazy remembrances of Joe Biden. So they set it up that way. He's remembering back, and then, you know, they do all this stuff. Yeah, it's
They
very
are
funny.
going for it.
Yeah.
I bet nobody got the rights to that one.
Exactly.
Edgar, what's the story that caught your attention?
What caught my attention is Mark Zuckerberg releasing an image of a 7-foot statue of his wife,
Yes.
Priscilla Chan, with his text on his post about this was bringing back the Roman tradition of making sculptures of your wife. This was met with probably equal parts like, wow, what a guy, and what the heck is wrong with you, buddy? It's a 7-foot statue. It's turquoise and silver. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, this is one of those, if you have some time on your hands this weekend, go read the write-ups about this, because people have some very funny things to say. Check out the reactions on Twitter and other social media about this. There's some very clever stuff. And of course, Business Insider did a piece where they talked with a clinical psychologist in Massachusetts who warned that such a lavish gift could be a red flag for a relationship. So,
isn't that what they call love bombing?
Oh my God.
So the headline that caught my attention this week is we have the Golden Bachelorette coming up.
Oh, yes.
This launches on September 18th on the heels of the success of the Golden Bachelor, and one of the many contestants, I think there are about 24, is from Peabody.
Yeah.
His name is Ken O, and he is, as he describes, honest, adventurous, and active. He loves Ted Lasso and Miley Cyrus. He loves tennis, he's a marathoner, and he loves cycling. So he is going to be vying for the attention of Joan Vassos, the 61-year-old Golden Bachelorette. She is a widow, a mother of 4, grandmother of 3, a school administrator who just loves life and is looking for the right man. So we have our own candidate here, right from Massachusetts.
this is, what's his name, Joe O?
His name is Ken O.
Oh, Ken O.
We don't know his last name.
Ken, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the Culture Show.
Yeah.
We're welcome here anytime. So reach out, let us know, folks out there, if you know Ken O. Put us in touch with him.
I'm sure ABC has him on lockdown.
I'm sure.
Until this airs. I have to say, I looked at the trailer this morning for the next season. He gets short shrift, so I don't know if that's representative of how the season plays out. So I have a mini lightning round within our lightning round, which is apparently they approached Susan Lucci for the Golden Bachelorette.
Oh, really?
Wait, what?
Yeah,
Oh,
Susan
wow.
Lucci.
Wow.
And she said, because she loved the Bachelor, the Golden
Yeah.
Bachelorette, she said no, thank you.
Yeah, because
Wow.
she had a real love story with her husband.
Yes.
Yeah. So
And imagine
you know,
if that's what wins her an Emmy, though. You know what I mean?
Well, she did. She won.
She eventually
Yes,
got one.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
But it's not acting, Edgar. It's real life.
Yeah, that's true.
It shows.
Yeah, right.
All right, that's all for this edition of The Culture Show. Kelly, what's coming up on Under the Radar this weekend?
Very excited. We're doing a segment about South Asian women in politics because the South Asian voter bloc is very excited about VP Harris and also Usha Vance. So there's a lot of conversation about that. Second part of the show is more about the Boston Summer Mixtape. We really dive in. This is the sophomore edition. Love it.
And Edgar, what can you tell us about the Curiosity Desk?
Well, check out our latest episode if you're interested in watching me swim in that dirty water of the Charles River. If you're afraid to do it yourself, don't worry, I did it for you. But we also talk about why it is that many days you can't swim in there, why you could swim in there more often than you used to, and why there's hope that maybe we'll be able to swim there all summer in future summers.
And look, all of your skin is still on
It's
you.
all still there. I do have the third eye in my back, but other than that, I'm fine.
Monday on the show, rapper Cake Swag previews her forthcoming album, and we look at a production of Richard III with a punk rock influence. Thanks today to the BPL technical and logistics crew, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cadena, Chris Hanks, and Amanda Francis. Thanks to City Table, Lennis Hotel, and the Newsfeed Cafe. I'm Jared Bowen. Have an art-filled weekend.
Where's Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library!
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's art and culture programming.
Spend your afternoon with us. Stay with us for GBH's All Things Considered at 4.